The moment the black coffin began to tremble, it felt as though everyone's heart had been gripped by an invisible force. In the courtyard where the outer sect disciples resided, Chuyang watched the scene unfold and curiously asked, "Teacher, who do you think will win?" "It's hard to say. It depends on how much of Grand Emperor Tunri's legacy was left behind," Old Mo replied. Sword intent filled the sky, slicing the space into countless fragments. The black coffin was utterly shattered by the sword aura. Then, from within the remnants, a middle-aged man clad in a golden robe stepped out. The instant he appeared, it was as if the very heavens and earth had been cleaved apart by sword energy. He held a sword in his arms, his golden robe flapping violently in the cold wind. His sword-shaped brows and piercing eyes seemed like blades themselves. He gave off the impression of being a living sword, sharp and deadly, so much so that many didn't dare to look at him for long. Those who tried found their eyes aching, as if cut by invisible blades. "Master!" The White Cloud Sword Master greeted the heavenly sword ancestor with a smile. "I thought these old bones would be buried forever in the blood-dust coffin. I never expected we'd meet again," the heavenly sword ancestor said with a hearty laugh. His voice was loud, and his laughter thundered in the ears of those around him. "I would have preferred never having to see you again." The White Cloud Sword Master chuckled and shook his head. They had both entered the blood-dust coffin voluntarily, to sleep until the sect faced a life-or-death crisis. That they were awake now meant the situation was beyond saving. "I want to see who dares to invade my heavenly sword sect," the heavenly sword ancestor said with a cold snort, looking skyward as countless streaks of sword aura burst from his eyes. "Oh my God! It's the heavenly sword ancestor. It's really him." The entire heavenly sword sect erupted in chaos. Even though people only saw him from a distance, that single figure was etched into their minds. As the heavenly sword ancestor and the White Cloud Sword Master emerged from the coffin, the surrounding elders all bowed and greeted them respectfully. The White Cloud Sword Master's gaze landed on Yubuli. Yubuli's body trembled. Tears of emotion welled in his eyes as he cautiously stepped forward. "Master," he whispered, staring at the man who had played such a pivotal role in his life. He had never imagined he'd get to see his master again, let alone speak the word master to him once more. "Bewley, it's been a long time," the White Cloud Sword Master said with a warm smile. "Master, I've let you down," Yubuli said in anguish. He had failed to manage the sect well. Now, an overwhelming enemy had come, forcing both his master and the ancestor to awaken early and risk their remaining life force to clean up his mess. "No, you've done very well." The White Cloud Sword Master shook his head and said, "Do you remember what I once told you? Any reform or progress will be filled with setbacks and hardship, and will be accompanied by failure and destruction." "Well then, are you done reminiscing?" Rinpingsheng stood high above them, laughing lightly. "That was truly touching. You're far too arrogant." The heavenly sword ancestor glared at him. His Paragon Meridian Realm aura surged like a crashing river. He slowly raised his long sword and slashed at the sky, a seemingly ordinary move, yet it burst forth with tens of meters of sword force. The black mist was dispersed, and even space seemed to split in two. Rinpingsheng punched the sword aura away, but his right hand trembled from the blow, numbed by the sheer force. "This is already a life-or-death moment for our sect. There's no need to talk about one-on-one duels or heroics," the heavenly sword ancestor said, glancing at the White Cloud Sword Master. The two shared a look and nodded. Then, together, they launched their assault on Rinpingsheng. They no longer cared about reputation, only the survival of their sect mattered now. Before they entered the blood-dust coffin, they had been legendary figures. For two of them to gang up on one opponent felt disgraceful. But in this moment, they cast aside all pride. Everything they did was for the sect. The heavenly sword ancestor walked through the air, and with each step, the sword aura around him grew stronger. When he finally faced Rinpingsheng directly, the sword aura around him had formed into a massive dragon. It roared across the sky, tearing open the heavens and shaking the void. Meanwhile, the white cloud sword master walked on clouds with every step, as if the world itself shifted with the rise and fall of his movements. Bathed in autumn winds, he looked like a reclusive immortal untouched by mortal dust. With a flick of his horsetail whisk, the void crumbled and vanished into nothingness. The three faced off, their auras intertwined and rippling through the sky. Ren Pingxing unleashed his sun-devouring demon fist, every punch vast and overwhelming, filled with demonic energy that seemed ready to shatter the heavens. The heavenly sword ancestor wielded his heavenly sword intent with expert mastery. His sword split the silent void with oceanic force, skillfully countering Ren's attacks. As for the white cloud sword master, each flick of his whisk summoned clouds and mist, mountain upon mountain. His attacks looked weightless, but when Ren made contact with them, the impact nearly sent him flying. Under their combined assault, it wasn't long before Ren Pingxing began to falter. His black robe was torn to shreds, and his body was covered in countless wounds. Though he still held on, he clearly was reaching his limit. Seeing an opportunity, the heavenly sword ancestor slashed at Ren's abdomen with a blade of searing sword energy. Ren narrowly dodged, his black clothes utterly destroyed. Before he could catch his breath, the white cloud sword master's whisk slammed into his back. He felt an overwhelming force hit him from behind, and his body was hurled toward the ground. Boom! With a thunderous crash, Ren's body smashed into the earth, kicking up dust and causing the ground to tremble. The battlefield was a ruin, cracked and broken even further. Seeing this, the disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect finally let out a sigh of relief. That man is powerful, but still no match for the ancestors. The Heavenly Sword Ancestor and White Cloud Sword Master hovered above the massive crater. As the dust settled, the scene inside became clear. Ren Pingxing lay bloodied and battered, not a single spot on his body untouched by wounds. The wind howled through the battlefield. Nearby willow trees bent from the cracks in the earth. In the gusts, their branches danced like ghosts, wild and chaotic. Ren slowly propped himself up with his weak, broken body. He coughed violently, spitting out blood, his entire body soaked in red. He ignored the angry, hateful stares of the surrounding Heavenly Sword sect members. Instead, he quietly reached into his storage ring and pulled out a black axe. The moment the black axe appeared, the world fell into a dead silence. Yu Buli, who had studied the life of Grand Emperor Tun Ri in detail, turned pale with shock. His voice trembled as he said, "The sun-devouring axe. What's the sun-devouring axe?" An elder nearby asked curiously. "It's a Grand Emperor true treasure," Yu Buli replied concisely with just 4 words. But those 4 words were enough to drain the color from every face in the room. Only weapons engraved with Grand Emperor runes and refined through heaven's will tempering could be called Grand Emperor true treasure. Typically, a Grand Emperor could refine 2 weapons during the process of shouldering the heaven's will. One was their life-bound treasure, which referred to a weapon that had accompanied the Grand Emperor since youth, fighting and growing with them, like Su Zimo's Shadow Tyrant or Chu Yang's Wandering Dragon Sword. After ascension, a Grand Emperor would usually take their life-bound treasure with them. The second was a replica of the life-bound treasure, also engraved with Grand Emperor runes and tempered by the heaven's will. This replica would become the Grand Emperor true treasure, left behind for future generations. Its power surpassed even universe-grade weapons. Only the life-bound treasure itself was stronger. It's important to understand. Grand Emperor runes and heaven's will tempering are things no ordinary weapon can endure. Only a Grand Emperor could perform such a process. The moment the sun-devouring axe appeared, in the courtyard where the outer sect disciples stayed, the old man in Chu Yang's ring, the Lord of Samsara, shouted urgently, "Run! Run now! Leave the Heavenly Sword sect!" "What's wrong, teacher?" Chu Yang asked in confusion. "That's a Grand Emperor true treasure. With that thing in his hands and his current strength, he's not even afraid of Imperial Meridian Realm powerhouses. He could destroy the entire Heavenly Sword sect," the elder cried out in panic. If you don't leave now, everyone's going to die. Then I'll go warn Master, Chuyang said quickly, looking toward Yubuli on the distant mountain peak. There's no time. I don't have the strength right now to protect you. The Lord of Samsara spoke anxiously. You have to get out. If you don't, no one's escaping. But Master's been good to me. If I just leave like this, wouldn't that be heartless? Chuyang hesitated. You're looking at it the wrong way. If you stay, everyone dies. Who will avenge them? The disciples, your master. Old Mo explained. If you leave now and one day grow strong, then you can avenge them. That's the best way to repay their kindness. Chuyang still looked reluctant, staring at Ren Pingxing's figure floating back into the air. The sun-devouring axe was raised high above his head, as waves of baleful energy engulfed the sky. Deep within the clouds, black fog boiled, like the end of the world. Teacher, if you lend me your power like you did at Blackwater Mountain, and we fight alongside the White Cloud Sword Master and the Heavenly Sword Ancestor, do we have a chance? Little Yang, you still don't get it. The Lord of Samsara sighed. Today, even if 3 Imperial Meridian powerhouses showed up, it'd be useless. Unless someone had another Grand Emperor true treasure. It's just a weapon. Can it really be that powerful? Chuyang said in disbelief, watching Ren Pingxing's terrifying momentum grow stronger by the second. You think it's just a weapon? The elder said, voice full of emotion. Everything has a soul, plants, beasts, people. Even a sword or a piece of scrap iron, after being inscribed with Grand Emperor runes and tempered by destiny, becomes something far more than a weapon. You could even say it has broken free of its limits, as practically half a living being. Above the Heavenly Sword sect, the black fog thickened, completely blotting out the sun. A beam of black light shot into the sky from the sun-devouring axe, followed by a tempest and a burst of baleful energy. A terrifying, grotesque face, formed entirely of demonic aura, condensed over the sky. Who has awakened me? A booming voice exploded across the heavens. Senior, I am a descendant of Ancestor Tun Ri. Ren Pingxing responded quickly. A descendant of Old Man Tun Ri? The face of Mist stared at Ren for a long moment, finally sensing his bloodline aura. Since you are a descendant, by our pact, you may call upon my power 10 times. After 10 times, I am free, the face slowly declared. A Grand Emperor true treasure possesses a soul. In terms of thought and intelligence, they are not inferior to humans. Even though their powers were granted by the Grand Emperor, that didn't mean they would serve his descendants forever. If gaining sentience meant losing their freedom and becoming someone's tool of slaughter, then they'd rather be destroyed. That was their final pride. Thus, every Grand Emperor made a deal with their weapon spirit. Help their descendants 10 times and then be free. Of course, not all spirits would leave after 10 uses. In sects like the True Martial Sacred Ground, they'd strike long-term deals, such as being offered cultivation resources in exchange for help in times of need. But in Ren Pingxing's case, with the decline of the Ren clan, it was unlikely the spirit would be willing to stay. As the sky was completely swallowed by darkness, the Heavenly Sword Ancestor and the White Cloud Sword Master exchanged heavy looks. Master, this might be the last time we fight side by side, the White Cloud Sword Master said with a carefree smile. Better to die against a Grand Emperor true treasure than rot away in the blood-dust coffin. The Heavenly Sword Ancestor laughed heartily. Men like them had long since cast aside fear of death. They had only remained in that coffin to serve their sect for a little longer. Yubuli, meanwhile, was helping the other elders evacuate the disciples. Whoever could escape must. Chuyang looked at the chaos unfolding in the sect and shook his head with a bitter smile. He hadn't been here long, but he had formed deep feelings for this place. It had become like a home. He knew he couldn't change anything. He was simply too weak. After a few moments of reflection, Chuyang turned to leave, but then he saw Yubuli flying through the air toward him. Master Yu? Chuyang looked at him in confusion, not sure why Yubuli had sought him out. If the sect is destroyed today, the blame is mine alone. I will be the sect's eternal sinner. the one responsible for this disaster. I hope you will be ashamed of me, Yubuli said seriously. Kid, we haven't known each other for long, but I trust one haven't misjudged you. If you ever achieve something in the future, I hope you will restore our sect. As he spoke, Yubuli removed a ring from his right hand and handed it to Chuyang. This is the sect master's ring. If you're willing, then from this moment on, you are the fourth sect master of the Heavenly Sword sect. If not, that's okay too. Everyone walks their own path. Just follow your Tao heart. Don't let anything bind you. Chuyang was silent for a moment, then slowly took the ring and said with firm resolve, Master, the day I achieve anything in life, I swear I'll make the name of the Heavenly Sword echo across the entire western region. Yubuli burst out laughing, glanced at Renpingsheng looming menacingly in the sky, and patted Chuyang on the shoulder with satisfaction. Go now before it's too late. You're not leaving, Master? Chuyang asked. I'll live and die with the sect. Yubuli shook his head. This is a mess I caused, and it must end with my sacrifice. But the cost, it's far too great. He sighed as he looked at the ruined sect around him. Damn it all. This was built through generations of effort. Watching Chuyang's retreating figure, he cast one last, reluctant glance over the land, then shot into the sky toward Renpingsheng. With the power of the Grand Emperor Rune and the aura of heaven's wills infused in him, Renpingsheng resembled a demonic god descending from the heavens, standing tall above the world, the sun-devouring axe cloaked in black mist. With one swing, mountains shattered, rivers dried up, space itself tore apart, and everything disintegrated into silence. The sky split open violently, and the rupture lingered for minutes without healing. Endless demonic energy stirred up chaotic space currents, wreaking havoc across heaven and earth. The Heavenly Sword ancestor's long sword clashed with the sun-devouring axe. Sparks flew in all directions. But in mere moments, the long sword shattered into fragments. The White Cloud Sword Master's once ethereal aura was gone. He used his horsetail whisk to wrap around the axe, attempting to pull it away. But the overwhelming demonic energy devoured the whisk instantly. The White Cloud Sword Master's expression turned to shock, and he quickly retreated with the Heavenly Sword Ancestor. Just one move and both of their weapons were destroyed. Renpingsheng raised the sun-devouring axe high above his head. In a single breath, the axe grew several times larger. The sky filled with churning black energy, all the dark mist gathering together, drawn as if guided by the massive axe swing. It was like meteors falling from the heavens, all crashing down onto the Heavenly Sword sect. Explosions echoed across the land. Boom! 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 Accompanied by waves of violent demonic energy. Centuries of honor and glory, completely obliterated. Dust and smoke blanketed everything. It was over. The Heavenly Sword Ancestor stared at the destroyed sect, blood leaking from the corners of his eyes, his pupils bloodshot with grief. As he, the White Cloud Sword Master, and Yubuli charged recklessly at Renpingsheng with nothing left to lose, Ren remained calm. In the midst of the devastation, it was as if he saw flashes of his own clan's annihilation long ago, burning bright in his memory. He gently swung the massive axe, and all returned to silence. A soft breeze blew in from the distance. The black mist had dispersed, and a few white clouds hung in the azure sky, unusually vivid. The world was quiet, so quiet that even a heartbeat could be heard. It was as if the apocalyptic battle just now had never happened. If not for the smoldering ruins below, no one would ever believe what had transpired. Renpingsheng stood on the edge of the sky, staring out at the slowly setting sun. Tears streamed down his cheeks. I've avenged them, so why do I feel no joy? Only this crushing emptiness. He descended, landing at the heart of the ruins, surveying the destruction he had caused. His injuries were still severe. He swallowed several pills to stabilize his condition, then turned and left, searching for a place to heal. After fleeing the Heavenly Sword sect, Chuyang ran westward. Behind him, the black mist crashed down like a meteor shower. He ran desperately, but the mist was incredibly fast, and its explosion radius vast. He dodged several clouds of black mist, but one still managed to hit him. At the final moment before impact, Chu Yang activated his Azure Cloud Battle Physique. A red and blue aura enveloped him. A swirling vortex symbol appeared on his forehead, and streams of life energy flowed between his hair strands. His ears elongated and sharpened like an elf's. Then the black mist hit him, and everything went black. Who knows how long passed before Chu Yang finally regained consciousness. His whole body was sore and weak, but thankfully he hadn't been seriously injured. He knew it was the Azure Cloud Battle Physique that saved him. Aside from enhancing his overall strength, it also granted him a special battle technique, Light of Life. It rapidly healed his wounds. Looking around, he realized he was at the bottom of a cliff. He recalled that there was a cliff near the Heavenly Sword Sect. Black water flowed beside him, and the surrounding trees were lush and green. Suddenly, Chu Yang noticed the irony. Fate had brought him once again to the Blackwater River. The Blackwater River ran across the entire western region, and it was said to begin at the center of the eastern continent. He had obtained the Azure Cloud Battle Physique atop Blackwater Mountain, and now he had encountered the Blackwater again. "Little Yang, are you all right?" Old man Samsara in the ring asked with concern. "I'm fine. It's thanks to the Azure Cloud Battle Physique. But the others in the sect..." Chu Yang went quiet, exhaling deeply. "Don't think too much. Just focus on getting out of here first," the old man replied. Chu Yang nodded and glanced at the sect master's ring on his right hand. He knew this was a heavy responsibility. He scanned his surroundings, about to follow the river downstream, but then noticed a hidden cave entrance on the cliffside ahead. It was covered in vines, and since no creatures seemed to live in this area, weeds had grown wild around it. If he hadn't been lucky, he might never have seen it. Chu Yang picked up a stone and tossed it inside, testing for danger. After hearing nothing, he drew his wandering dragon sword, spiritual energy pulsing through the blade, and sliced away the vines in a few quick strikes. He stepped inside. The light was dim, the space small, it looked man-made. Inside the cave was nothing, except a stone table in the center. On the table sat an ancient book, covered in dust. Chu Yang gently blew the dust off and picked up the book. Its yellowed cover bore just a single word: "Forget." "What is this? Doesn't look like a cultivation manual or martial art," Chu Yang murmured. Still, the character "Forget" seemed to carry a strange weight. He slowly opened to the first page, read for a while, and then realized it was an autobiography. "I am the forgotten Taoist, born in a very ordinary village in the western region. When I was 6 years old, my parents died of illness, leaving me to survive alone. With a frail body, I climbed the mountain not far from our village. There was a Taoist temple atop the mountain. The temple master took pity on me and accepted me as a disciple. When I was 15, while descending the mountain, I found a glowing orb on the road. As soon as I picked it up, it turned into a fragrant pill. I was young and couldn't resist temptation, so I swallowed the pill. From that moment on, my life changed completely. When I returned to the temple, none of my fellow disciples recognized me, not even the temple master who had once taken me in. I began to wonder, had the world forgotten me? I left the temple and began to wander. As my journey continued, I discovered the situation was far worse than I had imagined. People didn't just forget me, even the things I interacted with would be forgotten. I ate a bun from a street vendor, and moments later, the vendor had no memory of ever serving me. I broke a branch off a tree, and soon the tree grew a new branch as if the old one had never been touched. Even the tree forgot me. As I aged, the forgetting worsened. I forgot how to smile. I forgot how to be sad. Or perhaps it was that joy had forgotten me, and sorrow had, too. I stabbed myself with a sword but felt no pain. I knew then, even pain had forgotten me. I watched people my age die one by one while I only slightly aged. It was as if even time itself was beginning to forget me. Later, I learned the orb I swallowed as a child was called the Oblivion Bead. It ranked fourth on the world's rarest treasures list. There are only two such orbs in all existence, one yang bead, one yin bead. The yang bead was once in the possession of the legendary Grand Emperor Wang Qin. The yin bead was the one I consumed. There are only two ways to break the curse of forgetting cast by the oblivion bead. One is to find both the yin and yang beads and swallow them together. Doing so would not only lift the curse but also grant mastery over the grand Tao of yin-yang. The other way is to shoulder the heaven's will and ascend as a grand emperor. But I knew my own limits. My talent was poor, and the yang bead was already in the grand emperor's hands. I had no hope. As for becoming a grand emperor, that was an absurd dream. So I went to Dragon City and obtained 10 pages of immortal paper to record the story of my life. That would be the only proof I ever existed. From now on, I will wander the entire primordial heartlands, slowly fading away in solitude and silence. Chu Yang finished reading the autobiography and slowly closed the book, his thoughts lingering. He deeply sympathized with the man's story. "Teacher, have you ever heard of this forgotten Taoist?" Chu Yang asked.
No.
"Probably one of those strange hermits." The Lord of Samsara replied. "Since this is the senior's autobiography, I'll leave it here. Hopefully more people in the future will learn of his existence," Chu Yang said with a soft smile, placing the book back on the stone table and preparing to leave. Suddenly, the book emitted a white glow. Countless words appeared within the light. Chu Yang's pupils constricted. The forget character on the book's cover flew out and shot directly into his forehead. He quickly sat cross-legged, beginning to comprehend the essence of that single character. After a long while, the book turned to dust and vanished into the air. Chu Yang slowly opened his eyes. Hidden within the book was a meridian technique, the 4 forms of oblivion. But only one form was present, endless regret. Ordinary pulse techniques were active, they required conscious activation by the cultivator. But the 4 forms of oblivion seemed more like passive abilities, already fused with Chu Yang. Endless regret, the first form, helped Chu Yang completely forget the feeling of pain. From now on, no matter how badly he was injured, he would not feel any pain. Of course, forgetting pain didn't mean the injuries weren't real. If left untreated, they could still be fatal, but he would no longer feel the agony. Chu Yang drew his wandering dragon sword and cut a gash on his arm. He felt absolutely no pain. "I really can't feel it," he said in surprise, looking at the wound, a hint of joy in his voice. "Little Yang, this is your great fortune," the Lord of Samsara said with a smile. "I wonder what the other 3 forms of the 4 forms of oblivion are." "Forgetting time? Forgetting the self," Chu Yang muttered. Endless regret didn't seem to boost attack power, but in reality, it had immense value. When someone is severely injured, their combat effectiveness plummets. Part of that is physical weakness, but another part is pain. When wounds tear open in battle, nerves scream, and the pain floods the brain. Every movement becomes excruciating, draining strength. As they say, in a fight between equals, the bolder one wins. With endless regret, Chu Yang believed that against opponents of his level, he now had a serious edge. Meanwhile, within the true martial sacred ground, Yen Buhui had recovered somewhat after several days of healing. After much thought, he dragged his weakened body to South Goose Mountain. "You want my help?" Su Zimo asked with a curious look, smiling faintly. "Yes, I don't need you to destroy the Huang clan. Just help me remain in the true martial sacred ground. I'll deal with the Huangs myself later," Yen Buhui replied. He knew that as long as he carried the title of a disciple of the sacred ground, the Huangs wouldn't dare target him openly. But if he were expelled, he'd face endless pursuit. He wasn't afraid to die. He just wanted justice for his mother and himself. After destroying the Huang clan, he didn't care if he lived or died. "Oh? And why would I help you?" Su Zimo asked with a smirk. "I'm willing to become a sword in your hand," Yen Buhui said seriously. "Or just name your terms. As long as it's not asking for my sword, I'll agree to anything." He knew he had no leverage left. Placing his life in Su Zimo's hands was all he had. Become my subordinate, and when I shoulder the heaven's will, I'll appoint you as my war general. That's a great honor. Don't make it sound like I'm getting the better end of the deal. Su Zimo laughed. Yan Buhui glanced at him, not knowing where this guy's confidence came from. The heavens hadn't even appeared yet, and the western region was just one corner of the eastern continent. Not to mention the other continents, just the vast and endless middle continent was a threshold most could never cross in their lifetime. The primordial heartlands were vast, and many imperial lineages possessed a deeper foundation than the true martial sacred ground. Yan Buhui glanced at Su Zimo but didn't say more. After all, he was the one asking for help now. You're still too weak. Grow stronger as soon as you can. Otherwise, even as my subordinate, you'd be useless, Su Zimo said with a faint smile. I understand. I'll work hard. Yan Buhui nodded. Not just for you, but also to destroy the Huang clan. Go. With me here, Xiao Xingyu can't stir up much trouble. Su Zimo nodded. Thank you. Yan Buhui gave Su Zimo a deep look, then turned and left. Later, Su Zimo summoned Little Gue. Gazing at the distant sunset, he said casually, Go spread some word in the outer court. Say that Yan Buhui is one of my boys now. Anyone who targets him is targeting me. And make sure they understand. The one in charge of this imperial lineage is surnamed Su, not Xiao. I understand. Little Gue nodded and left. For the next few days, Su Zimo stayed on South Goose Mountain cultivating. A few days later, Vast Sky arrived at the true martial sacred ground. Huang Tianxie has left? Su Zimo asked in surprise. Vast Sky nodded. Young master, I wasn't able to ambush him. He had at least 2 Spirit Vein Realm guards with him. No matter. It was just to give him a warning, Su Zimo said, stroking his chin. Though I didn't expect him to leave so soon. Even if he stayed, it wouldn't matter, Little Gue added. With your words out, even the top 10 on the Hidden Tiger ranking wouldn't dare or be willing to get involved. Xiao Xingyu had no choice but to send Huang Tianxie away. Su Zimo nodded. He knew that Xiao Xingyu, like himself, held no real power, only the borrowed prestige of the Grand Elder's title. However, Xiao Xingyu had one advantage. His imperial-grade aptitude, a key asset in competing for the position of Holy Son. That made him someone worth investing in. Su Zimo, on the other hand, rarely revealed anything about himself. Most people still didn't have a strong impression of him. How's the situation in Imperial Gate City? Su Zimo asked Vast Sky. Following your suggestion, Situ Yunqing has begun establishing branch-ins to expand our intelligence network across the continent, Vast Sky reported. The Situ Inn has already opened in several nearby cities and towns. Her next plan is to expand into the imperial capital of the Violet Sun Empire, and then the Greenwood Empire secure the western region first. Good speed, but make sure she trains her own trusted staff. We can't afford any spies. Su Zimo nodded. After sending Vast Sky off, word also came from Little Gue. Yu Bo's cultivation had been crippled. In the outer court of the true martial sacred ground, some disciples who either lacked talent or hadn't worked hard enough would eventually be expelled if they failed to enter the inner court on time. This was a pure survival of the fittest. Some, before leaving, were desperate enough to take risks. Little Gue found one such disciple, promised him cultivation resources, and tasked him with crippling Yu Bo's talent. Once the job was done, the disciple was supposed to flee the sect with the resources and disappear. But Little Gue killed him instead. After all, dead men tell no tales. As for Yu Bo's master, an inner court elder, he was furious upon learning what had happened. He investigated thoroughly, but once he found the disciple's corpse, the trail went cold. He did all he could, and in the end, personally sent Yu Bo, now a crippled, powerless mortal, out of the sacred ground. When Ji Baiyu found out, she came to South Goose Mountain to thank Su Zimo personally. Su Zimo graciously accepted the thanks, then raised her monthly Featherflight crystal payment from 500 to 1,000. Ji Baiyu left in a storm of anger, grievance, and tangled emotions. A few days later, the sect's scheduled departure to the Sacred Spring sect finally arrived. The escort was the 7th Grand Elder. Traveling with him were Su Zimo, Little Gue, and 2 other disciples. His personal disciple, Luang, one of the 5 sons of Myriad Arrays, known for his mastery over slaughter arrays, and the 6th Grand Elder's disciple, Kai Yufei. Early in the morning, the group gathered at the Sky-Controlling Pavilion, which housed the sect's sage ships and supersonic shuttles. Most sects usually traveled on flying beasts. The true martial sacred ground used to do so as well. But during the era of Grand Emperor Xinxing, he had sage ships and shuttles constructed. He personally studied flying formations, engraved them into the hulls, and powered them with spirit crystals. Later, he combined them with spirit force gathering array formations, allowing the sage ships to absorb ambient spirit force mid-flight, reducing crystal consumption dramatically. Since then, such sage ships had become a status symbol among imperial lineages. The 7th Grand Elder wore white robes, his long hair tied in a scholarly bun. He looked like a simple intellectual. He always gave off a calm, refined aura. To strangers, one would never guess he was a powerhouse of the Empyrean Meridian realm. His disciple, Luang, on the other hand, looked fierce and imposing in a purple robe, surrounded by Paragon Meridian realm pressure. He carried a round formation disc on his back and a curved blade at his waist. As for Kai Yufei, disciple of the 6th Grand Elder, she was a stunning beauty. Her tight white outfit revealed her curvaceous figure. With short ear-length hair and a 3-foot green sword at her waist, she radiated a heroic air, not the softness typical of women. "Since everyone's here, let's depart," the 7th Grand Elder said. The massive sage ship stretched dozens of meters long. Its sleek, flowing form shimmered in golden light. It looked like a ship but was more refined and majestic. Everyone boarded. With a thunderous rumble, the holy ship soared into the sky like a streak of light. The blue sky stretched endlessly above, crystal clear, with soft white clouds drifting lazily overhead. The sage ship flew at incredible speed, parting the surrounding airflow like a blade. Once the ship had stabilized in the sky, the 7th Grand Elder eased its speed into a steady cruise. The ship flew smoothly toward the Sacred Spring sect. Standing at its edge, the group felt a sense of grandeur, like standing atop the world, looking down on the mountains below. The sky was such a vivid blue it felt unreal, and the clouds looked as if they could be touched with an outstretched hand. The view was beautiful but also somewhat monotonous. After a while, even beauty can grow dull. "Fair, the wind is strong out here. Come rest inside," Luang said with a smile, pointing to the ship's inner seating area. "Thank you, Senior Brother Lu," Kai Yufei replied coldly with a nod. The 4 of them sat in the resting area, while the 7th Grand Elder returned to his private quarters. "Fair, have you been busy lately? There was a market in the town below the sect last time. I asked you to go, but you didn't," Luang said, trying to strike up a conversation. "I focus on cultivation. I'm not very interested in things unrelated to that," Kai Yufei replied, shaking her head. "Also, Senior Brother Lu, please call me Junior Sister Kai next time." Luang smiled awkwardly at her frosty response, trying to keep things polite. He then looked toward Su Zimo, seemingly hoping to change the subject and relieve the tension. "Junior Brother Su, I heard you only recently began cultivating. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me anytime." Su Zimo had been reclining in his seat, eyes half closed, trying to nap. Upon hearing Luang's words, he opened his eyes and said, "Actually, I do have a question for you." "Oh? What is it?" Luang asked curiously. "What would you do if the girl you liked didn't like you back? Would you give up? Or would you keep clinging to her like a pathetic beta male simp?" As he spoke, Su Zimo shot a subtle glance at Kai Yufei. Well," Luang coughed and sighed. "Junior brother, you've clearly never liked someone before. Once you truly fall for someone, you'll understand. No guy wants to be a simp for no reason. And I'm not some hopeless case. Lots of junior and senior sisters in the sect chase after me. But I'm a man of loyalty. My heart belongs to Feyre alone. Kai Yufei rolled her eyes and muttered, Men really can be shameless sometimes. I don't agree with you, senior brother, Su Zimo said, shaking his head. Even if I fall for someone, I'd never play the simp. If she doesn't like me, I'd rather just force myself on her. I mean, it's just a hole. If once doesn't work, then 10 times. If 10 times doesn't work, then 100. A forced melon may not be sweet, but it still quenches thirst, you know. That sounds crude, but kind of reasonable, I guess. Luang said, looking at Su Zimo with enthusiasm. Junior brother, one conversation with you is worth more than 10 years of study. I think I've just had a revelation. How disgusting. All men are pigs. Kai Yufei snorted, storming into the airship, unwilling to stay near them. Luang then pulled Su Zimo aside to talk more about awkward, suggestive topics. Su Zimo realized this guy, despite his proper exterior, was quite the closet pervert. Just as their conversation was heating up, a soft bird call echoed in their ears. Su Zimo looked up to see a massive blue luan flying alongside the ship. The bird was snow-white, about half the size of the Sage ship. Its wings, when fully spread, cast a shadow that darkened the sky. Its feathers were razor-sharp, with red and green streaks near its tail. Its neck was long and proud, topped with a golden crest. Standing atop the blue luan's back was a group of 5 people. All were dressed in flowing white robes, radiating a serene aura, like celestial maidens descending from the heavens. Is that Sage ship from the true martial sacred ground? Asked a woman standing at the front of the group on the blue luan. She was clearly the leader, slightly older than the others, though so well kept she still looked youthful. If one didn't look closely, they might mistake her for a young maiden too. I'm the 7th Grand Elder of the true martial sacred ground. Grand Elder Fanyun, would you care to come aboard? The 7th Grand Elder stepped out of the ship and greeted her warmly. So it's Grand Elder Tianjin, came the voice from atop the blue luan. The bird then slowly descended toward the ship. Who are they? Little Gue asked curiously. They should be from the Immortal Spirit Sect. I heard they were invited to the Sacred Spring Sect's inner court competition this time. Luang whispered. The Immortal Spirit Sect was a top-tier force in the western region, founded by Wind Ancestor. It was said she was the wife of Grand Emperor Wu Chan, and although the sect wasn't officially part of his lineage, rumors claimed they possessed one of the Grand Emperor's true treasure. No one knew if the rumor was true. What set the Immortal Spirit Sect apart from other sects was its female-only policy. They never accepted male disciples, and every generation saintess was forbidden from marrying. As the Blue Luan landed, the Immortal Spirit Sect's party of 5 arrived. Besides Grand Elder Fanyun, the other 4 women wore white robes with pale green gauze shawls. After introductions were made, Su Zimo learned that one of the 4 women was the current saintess of the Immortal Spirit Sect. That surprised him. In his past life, when he visited the Sacred Spring Sect, the saintess hadn't come. Apparently, his actions had created a butterfly effect. Whatever the case, he had to stay alert. Becoming the saintess meant the sect would fully support her in the upcoming war for the Heaven's Will in the near future. Even if she failed, she would still be a top candidate to become the next sect lord. Her name was Nie Xingqing, a name Su Zimo had heard in his past life, but had never met in person. The Sage ship was quite spacious. The 7th Grand Elder and Grand Elder Fanyun sat to the side, chatting happily. Luang, meanwhile, looked at the 4 women of the Immortal Spirit Sect and sighed in frustration to Su Zimo. They're all stunning. What a pity they joined that sect. What's the big deal? Su Zimo replied with a grin. If I remember right, their rule only says the saintess can't marry. The other female disciples are fair game. Yeah, but the real issue is that their sect doesn't allow marriage outside the sect, Luang replied regretfully. Greetings, junior sisters. Luang approached with Su Zimo, smiling at the 4 disciples from the Immortal Spirit Sect. Greetings, senior brother. Nie Xingqing and the others responded politely, though Nie Xingqing's expression looked troubled and pale. You're all here to watch the Sacred Spring Sect's inner court competition, I assume? Luang asked as he took a seat nearby. I'm just stopping by on the way home, Nie Xingqing replied, shaking her head. Where's your home, junior sister? Luang smiled. To raise someone as talented as you, your family must be extraordinary. The Heavenly Sword Sect, Nie Xingqing replied coldly. Luang froze, then asked instinctively, You mean the sect that was wiped out recently? As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized he had been too blunt and quickly added, I didn't mean anything by that, junior sister. There's nothing that can't be said. Nie Xingqing shook her head. I only heard about it not long ago. Su Zimo, on the side, furrowed his brow. The Heavenly Sword Sect being wiped out immediately made him think of Ren Pingsheng. In his previous life, after obtaining Grand Emperor Tunri's legacy, Ren Pingsheng had destroyed the Heavenly Sword Sect soon after. In this life, Su Zimo had revealed the legacy's location to Ren ahead of time. Could this have caused the sect's earlier demise? He couldn't be certain. He'd have to investigate the sect himself. What's your connection to the Heavenly Sword Sect, junior sister? Su Zimo asked, curious. He didn't know much about Nie Xingqing and had no idea she was connected to the sect in his past life. Sect Master Yu Buli was my adoptive father, Nie Xingqing replied after a moment of silence. After some more conversation, Su Zimo pieced things together. Decades ago, Yu Buli had found an infant abandoned at the gates of the sect while out on an errand. The baby was just a month old. With no children of his own, Yu Buli took the child in and raised her as his own. As the child grew up, she became a striking and gifted young woman. When she turned 18, Yu Buli sent her to the Immortal Spirit sect so her talents wouldn't go to waste, choosing the most prestigious all-female sect in the Western region. As the Sage Ship passed over the Heavenly Sword Sect, it began to descend. Its massive frame compressed the air around it, which exploded outward with a boom as it landed. According to Nie Xingqing, if anyone had survived, she would stay at the sect. But if the sect was truly destroyed, she'd continue to the Sacred Spring sect with the others. Once the ship landed not far from the ruins, everyone disembarked, including the Seventh Elder and Elder Fanyun. The scene was one of utter devastation. Cracks scarred the land in every direction, remnants of a brutal battle. Scattered throughout the ruins, wild beasts were feeding on the decaying corpses. Nie Xingqing's aura of the desolate Meridian realm surged forth, and a blast of purple light from her hand killed several beasts in an instant. The rest fled in terror. It's all gone. Nie Xingqing stood in the heart of the ruins, memories flooding her mind. It had been the most beautiful part of her childhood. Her adoptive father, the senior sisters who doted on her, the playful senior brothers. Su Zimo scanned the area. Though the battle had ended some time ago, he could still sense faint traces of demonic energy. The sun-devouring axe of Grand Emperor Tunri. He thought about it for a moment and was certain of the culprit. Seeing that the others were still surveying the site, Su Zimo quietly approached Nie Xingqing and said, I think I know who did this. Who? Nie Xingqing turned instantly, her aura surging like a raging tide. How about we make a trade? Su Zimo smiled. Nie Xingqing stared at him for a long moment. What do you want? You inherited the Wind Ancestor's legacy, right? Su Zimo asked. Nie Xingqing nodded. It wasn't a secret. Her recognition by the Wind Ancestor was the very reason she had become the saintess of the Immortal Spirit sect. There's a painting in that legacy, Su Zimo smiled. I want it. What painting? Nie Xingqing frowned, puzzled. Now that's no fun. Su Zimo shook his head with a chuckle and turned to leave. Wait, there are several paintings in the legacy. I really don't know which one you mean, Nie Xingqing said, stopping him. I'm talking about the Wind Ancestor's self-portrait, Su Zimo said. Let's make a deal. You give me the painting, and I'll tell you who the murderer is. But why do you want the Wind Ancestor's self-portrait? Nie Xingqing asked, clearly suspicious. I've studied many great historical figures, Su Zimo replied. I heard she was a stunning beauty. I just want to see for myself. If you just want to look, I can show it to you right now. But if you want the entire painting, that's impossible, Nie Xingqing said firmly. I have no right to give away something from the ancestral legacy. So that's a no then? Su Zimo shook his head again and walked back toward the sage ship. This time, Nie Xingqing didn't stop him. She stood in place, deep in thought. She wasn't stupid. She didn't buy his just want to see her beauty excuse for a second. If Su Zimo wanted that painting, it had to be valuable. She hadn't paid it much attention before, but now she suspected the painting held some hidden secret. As for avenging her father, she would take her time. Clues would eventually surface. And if not, once she became powerful enough, perhaps even the bearer of the heavens will, she could come back to the true martial sacred ground and force the truth out of Su Zimo. But if that painting truly held an incredible opportunity, and she let it slip away, she might never get another chance. After thoroughly inspecting the ruins and confirming there were no survivors, the group reboarded the ship and set off toward the Sacred Spring sect. Throughout the journey, Nie Xingqing never stopped watching Su Zimo, even wondering if he had something to do with the sect's destruction. Su Zimo leaned back, eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. Whether Nie Xingqing gave him the painting or not didn't matter anymore. Through his subtle probing, he had already confirmed. She had it with her. After flying for half a day, the sage ship finally arrived at its destination, the Sacred Spring sect, a sect with a long and rich history. The origin of the Sacred Spring sect carries a touch of legend. It's said that long ago, a sage passed through the western region and discovered a spiritual spring, a natural treasure formed by the dense concentration of heaven and earth's spiritual energy. It was the ideal place to establish a sect. This sage, benevolent by nature, began preaching and spreading his teachings around the spring, attracting villagers from several nearby towns. Everyone who came was allowed to drink from the spring. Over time, the sage's name spread far and wide, and the number of cultivators gathering around the spring grew steadily. Eventually, they suggested formally founding a sect, naming the sage the Sacred Spring Sage, and naming the sect after him, Sacred Spring Sect. Several hundred years later, when the sage was preparing to leave, he passed the position of sect master to his eldest disciple. At that time, the Sacred Spring sect was just a small force hovering between third and second-tier status. A few centuries after that, one disciple of the sect accidentally saved a man's life. The man promised to repay the favor someday, but no one took it seriously, thinking it was just polite words. No one could have predicted that a century later, the man's voice would echo across the entire primordial heartlands. Today, I bear the mandate of heaven and ascend as Grand Emperor, titled Wu Chun. I shall rule over the 8 desolates and dominate the universe. That man had become the Grand Emperor of his era. From that moment on, the Sacred Spring sect entered a golden age. The disciple who saved him was made sect lord. With the protection of Grand Emperor Wu Chun, the Sacred Spring sect rose rapidly, becoming a first-rate power. It's said that Grand Emperor Wu Chen's wife was Wind Ancestor, which also strengthened the ties between the Sacred Spring sect and the Immortal Spirit sect. The sage ship slowly descended at the entrance of the Sacred Spring sect. From above, the sect didn't quite match the grandeur of the true martial sacred ground, but it was still majestic. Ancient trees towered skyward, rivers hung like waterfalls from the cliffs, mist curled like silk, mountains loomed like prisons, towers stood like blades. Giant beasts over 1,000 meters long roamed near the sect, dragging mountains behind them. Some disciples released sword auras like seas, while others struck with lightning, splitting the sky in half. Most incredible of all were the springs scattered throughout the sect. Some bloomed like flower fields, some roared like beasts, others turned into a rain of swords or shot hundreds of meters into the sky, merging with the clouds. Grand Elder Tianjin, Grand Elder Fanyun, it's been a while. The Sacred Spring sect's master, Luo Changhe, arrived with a group of elders to welcome them. Sect Lord Luo, it seems your cultivation has improved again since our last meeting. Grand Elder Tianjin smiled. Not at all. Please come in. The feast is ready. The inner court competition will begin tomorrow morning, Luo Changhe said. inviting them inside. By the time they arrived, it was already late afternoon. After dinner, the sky darkened as dusk set in. With the competition scheduled for the next morning, rooms had already been prepared for the guests. Back in her room, Nie Xingqing took out Wind Ancestors' painting and began studying it. The woman in the painting looked incredibly lifelike, dressed in a light blue gauze gown, so realistic it seemed she might step out of the canvas. She resembled a celestial maiden descending from the heavens, a testament to the painter's astonishing skill. Just as Nie Xingqing was pondering the painting's meaning, a knock came at the door. Startled, she quickly hid the painting and opened the door. "You?" She frowned at the figure standing outside. Little Gue smiled. "I've come to discuss a deal." "Not interested," Nie Xingqing said, trying to shut the door, but Little Gue stopped her. "Don't you want to know who killed your adoptive father?" Nie Xingqing hesitated, then opened the door. "Let's talk business," Little Gue said as he walked in. "Help me kill Su Zimo, and I'll tell you who the murderer is." "That's impossible." Nie Xingqing shook her head. Su Zimo was the son of the vice-lord of the true martial sacred ground. If she killed him and enraged Su Qingshan, a war between the two sects could break out, and she would undoubtedly be sacrificed to appease his wrath. Even as the saintess of the immortal spirit sect, she wouldn't be protected. That much was certain. "What if I told you the destruction of the heavenly sword sect was ordered by Su Zimo?" Little Gue said calmly. "That's not funny." Nie Xingqing stared at him coldly. "I have no reason to lie," Little Gue said. "I've been by his side all along. I know many of his secrets. Why are you telling me this?" Nie Xingqing frowned. "Though I'm technically his subordinate, he's never treated me like a person. He's cruel and vicious. I want him dead," Little Gue said, eyes burning with hatred. "You don't need to worry. If we succeed, no one will ever know. And since we're in the Sacred Spring sect, we can blame them." "Let me think about it," Nie Xingqing said after a pause. "You may be the saintess, but your position isn't unshakable," Little Gue said, lips curling into a smile. "As I understand it, the reason Su Zimo wiped out the Heavenly Sword sect had to do with a Grand Emperor's legacy. If you kill him, the legacy becomes yours. And we split all his resources 50-50. Think about it. As Su Qingshan's son, he's definitely carrying immense cultivation resources. With them, you'd solidify your role as saintess, and even have a shot at claiming the heavens will one day. What do we do?" Nie Xingqing asked, eyes burning with resolve. Her foster father's death left her torn, but the lure of a grand emperor's legacy and vast resources pushed her over the edge. "Tonight is our best chance," Little Gue said. "Once the competition ends tomorrow, and he leaves the Sacred Spring sect, we won't get another opportunity. From what I've seen, he's a womanizer. You just need to seduce him a little, then slip this into his wine and everything's done." Little Gue pulled out a small pouch of powder. "What is it?" Nie Xingqing frowned. "Meridian sealing powder," Little Gue replied. "Anyone below the Paragon Meridian realm who consumes it will have all their meridians sealed, reduced to a mere mortal. After that, he'll be at our mercy. Why not just kill him outright? Wouldn't that be safer?" Nie Xingqing asked. "Death would be too easy," Little Gue said, his expression twisted. "I want to torture him slowly, make him repay every bit of suffering I've endured." At first, Nie Xingqing was still a bit suspicious of what Little Gue had told her. But looking at Little Gue's twisted expression now, she figured Su Zimo must have really abused him. So much so that it had warped his psyche. People like that were capable of anything. "I understand," Nie Xingqing said calmly, taking the pouch of powder. "Then prepare yourself for tonight," Little Gue cautioned. "Be careful on the way to Su Zimo's room. If someone sees you, we'll never be able to explain it." Nie Xingqing nodded silently. As she watched Little Gue leave, her eyes flickered with deep thought. Finally, she exhaled long and slow, as if she had made up her mind. The bold eat well, the timid starve. She sat in front of the mirror and carefully applied makeup. Then, under the cover of the dark, moonless night, she quietly made her way to Su Zimo's room. At that moment, Su Zimo had just taken off his outer robe and was about to go to bed when he heard a knock on the door. "Who is it?" he asked, opening the door to find Nie Xingqing standing there. A wave of rose-like fragrance wafted toward him. She wore seductive, heavy makeup, expertly done. "Zimo, I wanted to talk to you about something," Nie Xingqing said softly, her eyes alluring. Su Zimo's lips curled into a knowing smile. He quickly welcomed her in with a friendly, eager attitude. "Sit down. Xingqing, have some water while I put my robe back on. Can't be too indecent," he said, pouring tea into a cup before turning to get dressed. "It's no trouble." Nie Xingqing smiled and casually stepped between Su Zimo and the tea. She took out the packet and dumped all of the powder into the cup. Once Su Zimo was dressed, she handed him the cup with a sweet smile. "Zimo, let's share a drink." "Sure," Su Zimo said, accepting the cup and smiling as he narrowed his eyes at her. He raised the cup and drank without hesitation. "Oh right, Xingqing, what did you want to talk to me about?" he asked casually after drinking. "No need to rush," Nie Xingqing replied, leaning in close to his ear and whispering, "Was it you who had someone slaughter the Heavenly Sword Sect?" Su Zimo's face instantly changed. He pointed at her, panicked, and said, "Why you? How did you know?" "So it really was you?" Nie Xingqing's expression turned cold. "I'll kill you," Su Zimo shouted, raising his palm to strike her in rage. But as soon as he tried to circulate his spirit force, he suddenly felt his body go limp and collapse to the ground. His face turned pale as he looked up at Nie Xingqing. "What did you do to me?" "Nothing special," Nie Xingqing smiled. "Just a little meridian sealing powder in that cup of tea." "You vicious whore," Su Zimo groaned, clutching his chest, eyes closed. "I've lost. Go ahead and kill me." Nie Xingqing snorted coldly and began walking toward him, spirit force swirling around her. She was ready to strike. But after only a few steps, something felt off. Her own meridians were being sealed, one after another. Her aura fluctuated, then vanished entirely. She collapsed to the ground like a pile of mud, completely drained of strength. "Xingqing, what's wrong?" Su Zimo's voice rang out again. "Don't hesitate. Kill me already." In that moment, Nie Xingqing had a terrible realization. She glanced at the teacup she had just used. Su Zimo was already standing, completely unharmed. He walked over, shaking his head with a sigh, crouched down in front of her, and said softly, "Oh Xingqing, your greed knows no bounds. Why are you so naive?" Just then, the door creaked open and little Gue snuck in, grinning. "Boss, how was my acting?" Passable," Su Zimo smirked. "A guy like me could live off my looks while you have to rely on acting. What a tragic world." Nie Xingqing realized the truth with dawning horror. She had been utterly played by the two of them. People say greed clouds reason. In the face of temptation, intelligence often takes a dive. Nie Xingqing glared at little Gue with fury in her eyes. He had come into her room earlier acting like he hated Su Zimo, claiming Su Zimo abused him and that he wanted revenge, saying he'd torture him slowly. All lies. Every word and every expression had been fake. And now, not only were her meridians sealed, but her body was paralyzed. She couldn't even speak. That tea had definitely been tampered with. "Now, what should I do with you?" Su Zimo said, tilting up her chin and staring into her hateful eyes with a grin. Then, both he and little Gue changed into black clothing, covering themselves completely. Little Gue didn't know the full plan, but he didn't ask questions. In disguise, they quietly carried Nie Xingqing to a remote rock garden behind the Sacred Spring sect. "What now, boss?" little Gue asked curiously. "Don't talk. We wait 1 hour," Su Zimo said coldly. He then removed Nie Xingqing's storage ring, and from it retrieved the painting he had been after. As for the rest of the ring's contents, he left some valuable items for himself and gave the rest to little Gue. After all, little Gue had been loyally doing errands for him, and his cultivation had just reached the true meridian realm. He couldn't afford to fall behind. An hour passed. Su Zimo looked at the completely panicked Nie Xingqing. He gripped her throat and whispered coldly, "Before you die, I may as well tell you, I wasn't the one who destroyed the Heavenly Sword sect. It was someone named Chu Yang. He's from a little place called Sunshine Village, but his luck is extraordinary. I killed you tonight because he offered me a deal I couldn't refuse. I hope you won't hold it against me." As Nie Xingqing stared in terror, unable to resist, Su Zimo's grip on her throat tightened. Night passed in silence. As dawn broke, rays of sunlight fanned across the sky like golden halos. Dew still clung to the tender green grass, sparkling like diamonds in the morning light. Within the Sacred Spring sect, preparations for the inner sect competition were in full swing. When the Immortal Spirit sect and true martial sacred sect disciples gathered that morning, Nie Xingqing was nowhere to be found. Before Elder Fan Yun could send someone to check on her, a shocking message arrived, like a bolt from the blue. A disciple passing by the artificial hill discovered Nie Xingqing's corpse. When Sect Lord Luo Changhe arrived at the scene with everyone, Grand Elder Fan Yun turned pale at the sight. "There's no saving her," Luo Changhe said after checking Nie Xingqing's condition. His tone was heavy. "Since this happened in your Sacred Spring sect, shouldn't you give us an explanation?" Fan Yun said coldly. "Rest assured, Grand Elder Fan Yun." Luo Changhe nodded. "I've already sealed the sect gates. No one is allowed to leave. After the inner court competition ends, I'll thoroughly investigate every disciple in the sect." Su Zimo glanced at Luo Changhe, feeling something was off. Normally, when a guest sect saintess is murdered on your grounds, wouldn't a sect lord drop everything and investigate immediately? Postponing for a competition seemed bizarre. From Luo Changhe's attitude, it appeared that the relationship between Sacred Spring sect and Immortal Spirit sect wasn't as friendly as rumored. "Are you trying to protect the murderer?" Fan Yun's face darkened. "By the time the competition ends, everything will already be settled." "You're making baseless accusations," Luo Changhe snapped back. "Just because she died here doesn't mean we're entirely at fault. Maybe she offended someone, and they came here to kill her. We'll take responsibility, but I'm not dodging anything. I've already said we'll investigate after the tournament." "Luo Changhe, is this your revenge for what happened back then?" Fan Yun's tone turned bitter as she dropped all pretense. Nie Xingqing's death wasn't just the loss of years of cultivation effort. She was carrying Wind Ancestors' legacy. If that legacy was lost, Fan Yun would become the scapegoat of the Immortal Spirit sect. "I'm not that petty," Luo Changhe said coolly. "But we don't know who the killer is yet. We'll take responsibility, but don't push all the blame onto us without evidence." "You want evidence?" Fan Yun growled, the pressure of her Imperial Meridian Realm cultivation exploding outward. Spirit force swirled around her. Behind her, a pale blue vortex formed. As it appeared, she moved her hands apart in the air, as if parting time and space. In front of her, a white curtain materialized out of thin air. "What is that?" Luong asked Su Zimo. "No idea," Su Zimo replied. "It's time reversal, a manifestation of Grand Elder Fan Yun's true fate ability," said Grand Elder Tianjin. "As long as the death happened within 24 hours, she can use it to replay the deceased's last hour before death." "That's impressive," Luong said, intrigued. "When cultivators reach the desolate Meridian Realm, they can condense a true fate. Upon reaching the Imperial Meridian Realm, they can manifest that true fate with special powers unique to each individual." As Grand Elder Fan Yun's hands moved across the curtain, images began to appear. Everyone focused on the scene. In the moonlit night behind the hill, Nie Xingqing lay motionless on the ground. Two black-robed figures sat beside her. They sat in silence for nearly an hour. Grand Elder Fan Yun's face darkened. She realized these people may have known about her ability, so they masked themselves and delayed the murder until the end of the hour, rendering her vision useless. But just before the scene ended, one of the black-robed figures stood up and grabbed Nie Xingqing by the throat. A deep voice came from him, Before you die, I may as well tell you, I wasn't the one who destroyed the Heavenly Sword sect. It was a guy named Chu Yong. He's from a little village called Sunshine, but his fortune isn't small. Once the man finished speaking, he ended Nie Xingqing's life. The two figures then left, heading toward the main gate of Sacred Spring Sect. Chu Yong, Sunshine Village. Fan Yun spat the names through gritted teeth. Her cultivation aura surged into the sky, shaking the air itself. Calm down, Grand Elder Fan Yun, Luo Changhe said quickly. Of course you're calm. Your sect didn't just lose your sect's saintess, she snapped. Because of this tragedy, I must return to handle the matter. As for your competition, I'm withdrawing from it. Understandable, Luo Changhe replied calmly. A saintess' death takes priority. We'll also investigate thoroughly on our end. For your sake, I hope your sect is truly uninvolved, Fan Yun said before turning and storming off with her disciples. Watching her leave in anger, Luo Changhe turned to Grand Elder Tianjin and smiled faintly. I hope this incident hasn't troubled you too much. It's fine, Tianjin shook his head. He then led Su Zimo and the others to the competition grounds. Meanwhile, Luo Changhe secretly summoned several elders and issued orders. Other than the disciples currently competing, search every corner of the sect. If you see anyone acting suspiciously, arrest them first, question them later. Senior Brother Lu, Su Zimo asked curiously, is there some history between Sect Master Luo and Grand Elder Fan Yun? I've heard some rumors, Luong replied quietly. I'll tell you when we get back. Elsewhere, Grand Elder Fan Yun rode her Zhonghuan beast at full speed back to Immortal Spirit Sect. She needed to begin her investigation with two clues, Sunshine Village and Chu Yong. At the true martial sacred ground, Bailey Xiao had been restless ever since returning from South Goose Mountain. She didn't know how Su Zimo had learned about Chu Yong, but the longer Chu Yong stayed in Sunshine Village, the more danger he was in. Su Zimo could use that knowledge to threaten her any time. So she summoned Xue Qianxue, ordering her to go to Sunshine Village, bring Chu Yong back, or find a safe place to hide him. Only then could she rest easy, because if Su Zimo one day decided to kill Chu Yong, she wouldn't be able to stop him. After receiving Bailey Zhao's orders, Xue Qianxue immediately set off for Sunshine Village. According to Bailey Zhao's plan, she had to relocate Chu Yong to a safe place before Su Zimo returned from Sacred Spring Sect. Meanwhile, Grand Elder Fan Yun led several disciples back to the Immortal Spirit Sect riding the great blue Luan birds. The death of the Saintess and the loss of Wind Ancestors' legacy enraged the entire Immortal Spirit Sect. Their Grand Elder, Xian Yun, personally came out of seclusion to handle the matter. The sect mobilized its full power across the western region, searching for a village named Sunshine and a young man named Chu Yong. Even small sects affiliated with the Immortal Spirit Sect joined in, eager to help. For them, this was a golden opportunity. If they could assist the sect, they might build a closer relationship and benefit from it in the future. Within just half a day, dozens of people in villages named Chu Yong or Sunshine were identified and investigated, with Grand Elder Sun Yun personally questioning them. Following Bailey Zhao's instructions, Xue Qianxue arrived at Sunshine Village, where she found Coach Mo. He left? Xue Qianxue asked, surprised. Yes, Coach Mo nodded. After Shower left, Chu Yang's cultivation improved rapidly. I recommended him to a friend of mine at the military camp in Profound Origin City. I don't know how he's doing now. Then he asked, how is Shower doing at the true martial sacred ground? She's doing well, Xue Qianxue replied. After a moment's thought, she said, if anyone comes asking about Chu Yong, just say you don't know. Don't reveal anything about his whereabouts. Coach Mo gave her a serious look. He had worked in Profound Origin City's garrison when he was young. He'd seen his share of political schemes and power plays. The world had always been messy. He nodded. I understand. I'm just a small village coach. What could I possibly know? Good. Xue Qianxue thanked him and was about to leave, when suddenly, a powerful pressure enveloped the entire village. She looked up to see several massive blue luan birds blotting out the sky. The spiritual pressure from these fifth-tier beasts shook the air itself. Atop the blue luans stood Grand Elder Xianyun and Grand Elder Fanyun, dressed in flowing purple robes, cold expressions on their faces. Beside them was a man wearing a white and blue striped robe. Grand Elder Xianyun, that should be Sunshine Village ahead, but I'm not sure if it's the one you're looking for. I'll go down and ask around, the man said obsequiously. His name was Xinqiu, the leader of a small sect near Sunshine Village, not even a third-rate force. Earlier that day, he had seen the Immortal Spirit Sect's bulletin about Chuyang. Though he didn't know Chuyang personally, there was indeed a village named Sunshine nearby. He immediately realized this was his chance. If he could help the Immortal Spirit Sect, even if he couldn't share their riches, a single bowl of leftover soup would be a blessing. He reported the lead, not expecting that Grand Elder Xianyun herself would come to investigate. Their response far exceeded his expectations. Xinqiu leapt from the blue luan and landed near Xue Qianxue and Ko Chemo. "Excuse me," Xinqiu said with a smile, "but is there a young man named Chuyang in this village?" "Who are you?" Xue Qianxue asked warily. "I'm Chuyang's master, the head of Little Sword Sect just outside the village," Xinqiu lied, still smiling. "He's a new disciple of mine, very talented. I wanted to train him well, but he disappeared recently. He mentioned once that his hometown was Sunshine Village. There are many Sunshine Villages in the western region, but I thought I'd try asking here." "He joined Little Sword Sect?" Xue Qianxue blurted out, surprised. "Oh? You know him?" Xinqiu's eyes lit up. "We don't," Ko Chemo quickly interjected. He did know of Little Sword Sect, a nearby sect whose strongest members were only at the Desolate Meridian Realm. But the blue luans above them far exceeded that level. Ko Chemo wasn't stupid. He knew something was off. Xue Qianxue realized she had made a mistake and kept quiet. "No need to deny it. I already heard you," Xinqiu said, still smiling. "Besides, I'm not here to cause trouble." "You misheard," Ko Chemo said firmly. "We really don't know any Chuyang." Xinqiu stared at them for a moment, then flew back up to the blue luan. "Well?" Grand Elder Fanyun asked. "These villagers are cautious," Xinqiu said. "But I'm quite certain there is a boy named Chuyang here. I just don't know if he's the one you're looking for." "That's enough," Grand Elder Xianyun replied coldly. "There might be many Chuyangs in the western region. Many Sunshine Villages, too. But someone named Chuyang from Sunshine Village? That combination made this one extremely likely." Grand Elder Xianyun and the others descended from the sky, their powerful aura blanketing the entire village. Looking down on them all, she said coldly, "You have 15 minutes to tell us where Chuyang is. Otherwise—" She paused. Then her voice turned icy. "Massacre the village. Who are you people?" Ko Chemo gathered his courage and stepped forward. "What has Sunshine Village ever done to deserve this?" Grand Elder Xianyun gave him a single glance, one that froze his soul. Her gaze was like a divine being looking at an ant. Ko Chemo felt like he couldn't even breathe. He was suffocating under her pressure. "I'm a disciple of the true martial sacred ground." "Who are you?" Xue Qianxue quickly stepped forward, hoping her identity might help. Grand Elder Xianyun's brow furrowed slightly. She glanced at Xue Qianxue and replied coldly, "Since when do we need true martial sacred ground's permission to destroy a village?" To her, it didn't matter if this village was the one they were looking for or not. Better to kill 1,000 by mistake than to let one escape. "This village is our senior sister Bailey's hometown. You can't touch it," Xue Qianxue said urgently. "Can your senior sister Bailey represent the entire true martial sacred ground?" Elder Xianyun snorted coldly. "Our senior sister Bailey is the niece of the 6th Grand Elder of the true martial sacred ground, and she has inherited the legacy of the Grand Empress Hongtian. She is very likely to become this generation's saintess. What do you think?" Xue Qianxue replied, gaining a bit of confidence. "So true martial sacred ground wants to get involved in this?" Elder Xianyun frowned slightly and glanced at Xue Qianxue. She had heard of the heir to Empress Hongtian's legacy, but hadn't expected this incident to be connected to the true martial sacred ground. With a flick of her finger, Elder Xianyun released a surge of spirit force. Xue Qianxue suddenly felt her entire body become immobilized, completely unable to move. "I'll take you back to true martial sacred ground to demand justice," Elder Xianyun said calmly. "As for the rest of you, guard this village. Without my order, no one leaves." She then brought Xue Qianxue, along with Elder Fanyun and several others, onto the Blue Luan and departed for the true martial sacred ground. Meanwhile, at Sacred Spring Sect, the inner court competition was in full swing. The strongest contender was undoubtedly Luo Yifeng, son of sect leader Luo Changhe. Not only was his cultivation realm far beyond his peers, but he had also mastered his father's famous signature technique, One Sword, Long River. This was a meridian technique created by Luo Changhe himself. Much of his present prestige had been earned through this technique, and so he had named it after himself. To Su Zimo, however, the inner court competition felt boring. After watching for a while, he began to doze off on the side. Before long, he was awoken by a particularly loud burst of shouting. The names Luo Yifeng and Mo Lei echoed from the crowd. "Is this the final match?" Su Zimo yawned and looked toward Luang. "Yeah, it's been dull all day. Finally something interesting," Luang replied with a grin. "Want to make a bet, Brother Lu?" Su Zimo asked. "What kind of bet?" Luang asked, intrigued. "Guess who wins between them?" Su Zimo smiled. "If I win, you give me a level 6 formation disc. If you win, I'll give you a drop of ancient wind blood." "Deal." "I pick Luo Yifeng." "Don't try to steal my pick," Luang said excitedly. "No problem. I'll take Mo Lei," Su Zimo said with a smile. The ancient wind blood had been taken from Nie Xingqing's storage ring. It wasn't particularly precious, but it was rare. As for the level 6 formation disc, its power was equivalent to an attack from an Imperial Meridian Realm cultivator. Generally, for a formation master to engage in combat, they had to first condense a formation seal and place it at a designated location, a process that was slow and prone to error, making formation masters weak in direct combat. To solve this, formation masters invented formation discs, which allowed them to store formation seals in advance and activate them instantly during battle. Although Luang was now at the Paragon Meridian Realm and had been a level 5 formation master for some time, his success rate at making level 6 formation discs was still well below 10%. To be considered a genuine level 6 formation master, one needed a success rate of 90%. Watching Luang smugly think he'd struck a great deal, Su Zimo smiled faintly. If his memory served him right, though most details of this competition had faded, he distinctly remembered one thing. Luo Yifeng would suffer an upset defeat, losing to an unknown inner court disciple. On the martial stage, Luo Yifeng appeared dressed in white, sword at his waist, and stepped up amid a thunderous roar of applause. When Mo Lei walked up, he received only a few scattered cheers, followed by loud boos. "Luo Yifeng, I want to bear your children!" A chubby girl in the crowd screamed at the top of her lungs, nearly overpowering all the other cheers. Luo Yifeng had been basking in the admiration, but his expression instantly crumbled upon hearing that. He silently lowered his head, drew his sword, and pointed it at the dark-clothed youth opposite him. Mo Lei stood quietly, absorbing the thunderous noise. Though it wasn't for him, he had waited a long time for this moment. All his years of hard work would bloom now, by defeating the boy everyone else had pinned their hopes on. Luo Yifeng locked eyes with Mo Lei. He didn't take the youth seriously. With a sword slash, a blinding sword light flashed through the air. He just wanted to end this meaningless fight quickly. Mo Lei snorted, and a thunderous tiger's roar echoed across the stage. A massive astral tiger, glowing with blue and yellow light, manifested beside him, its shadow concentrated around his fist. With a roar, Mo Lei shattered the sword light with a single punch. "What technique is that?" The surrounding disciples muttered in surprise. Then another strange sound rang out. This time, In addition to the tiger, a dark green turtle phantom appeared, shielding Emolay. Tiger for attack, turtle for defense. Emolay unleashed his full power. His fists and kicks surged with explosive force, and he began to overwhelm Luo Yifeng. This technique seems familiar. I've seen it somewhere, Luang muttered. Then, glancing at Su Zimo's confident smile, realization dawned on him. His face changed. No wonder you wanted to bet. You knew all along. He felt duped. Until now, Emolay had kept a low profile and never revealed any impressive pulse techniques. Of course Luang had written him off. The true fool sage, Su Zimo replied with a smile. At that moment Luang's mind clicked. Beast Fist style, created by the true fool sage, his signature meridian technique. Luang came from True Fool City, a place named in honor of the true fool sage, who had once saved it. The people there knew his legend by heart and took pride in it. The true fool sage lived a remarkable life. As a child, he was abandoned by his family because of his ugliness and was raised in the forest by a leopard. Growing up among beasts, he studied their habits and movements and eventually developed the Beast Fist style from his observations. It was said that when the Beast Fist style was cultivated to perfection, it could summon the phantoms of 100 different beasts. With a single punch, 100 beasts roared, the heavens crumbled, and the earth shattered. The power of 100 giant beasts was unimaginable. I wonder how many beast phantoms Emolay can summon now, Luang asked with keen interest. Although losing the match would cost him a set of level 6 formation discs, Luang still hoped Emolay could carry forward the legacy of the True Fool Sage. After all, for everyone in True Fool City, the sage represented something extraordinary. The battle on stage was almost entirely one-sided. With the boost from 2 beast phantoms, Luo Yifeng had almost no strength to fight back. He fought while retreating. As he neared the edge of the dueling platform, Luo Yifeng's eyes focused sharply. Forcing his sword to block Emolay's punch, he then leapt like a swallow, landing behind Emolay. To be honest, you've really surprised me, Luo Yifeng said calmly, though his expression was grave. You'll be even more surprised soon, Emolay replied without backing down. Luo Yifeng gave him a deep look. At that moment, his long sword began to tremble, and an invisible aura spread around him. What is that? The disciples watching below murmured in surprise at Luo Yifeng's transformation. I wonder how much of Brother Luo's technique your son has inherited, the 7th Grand Elder said with a smile from the sidelines. My son may be dull, but he has grasped a bit of the intent, Luo Changhe replied with a smile. But the other boy hasn't used his killing blow either. This match isn't over yet. To Luo Changhe, although his son had learned his signature meridian technique, one sword, Long River, that didn't mean he was unbeatable among peers. The opponent clearly had cards up his sleeve too. He actually hoped the sect would see more talented youths like Emolay emerge. As the invisible aura spread, Luo Yifeng slowly swung his sword. It was as if everyone could hear the sound of a great river rushing and waves crashing on the shore. Brilliant sword light burst from his blade. In everyone's eyes, the sword light transformed into a surging river. The river hung upside down in the heavens, reflecting countless worlds. The overwhelming waves, carrying unstoppable momentum, slashed toward Emolay. The phantom of a black tortoise let out a low cry. The phantom of a tiger roared fiercely. But the moment they clashed with the sword light, the tiger's image was immediately obliterated. Even the black tortoise's shell began to show cracks. The sword light flowed like a mighty river, matching Emolay blow for blow. As the black tortoise neared its limit, Luo Yifeng's sword gave off a clear ring. He was going for the finishing blow. At that moment, his sword was just 0.01 centimeters from Emolay's neck. In that critical instant, a sudden booming sound echoed in everyone's ears. A white light coiled around Emolay, shattering the sword light instantly. Luo Yifeng was blasted backward by a surge of powerful force. As the light faded, a snow-white Pegasus appeared in the sky. A vast, ancient, and primeval aura radiated from the creature, making it seem like the king of beasts, standing proudly over heaven and earth. His body was pure white, holy and pristine. It had a pair of 3-meter-long wings that could blot out the sky. Each feather glowed with sacred light. Its head resembled a horse, but a pitch-black horn grew from its forehead. Its eyes shimmered with silver, its left eye was crimson, and the right pitch-black. When the snowy Pegasus appeared, the surrounding space seemed to quake under invisible pressure. "What is that?" Luo Changhe stared at the beast, his expression serious as he pondered. "The god-beast, Rebirth Pegasus." The 7th Grand Elder replied in astonishment. When people mentioned the true Fool Sage, they praised his self-created beast fist style and eagerly recounted tales of his deeds. Most thought the 100 beast phantoms were just ordinary spirit beasts. But in truth, aside from those who had fought him in the same era, few knew the real story. A long, long time ago, the man known only by his title, the True Fool, once stumbled into the beastfolk's sacred inheritance hall. There, he saw many god-beasts long lost to history. Though he wasn't of the beastfolk and couldn't inherit their powers, he still comprehended the essence of 10 god-beasts. He fused those 10 god-beasts into his beast fist style. The Rebirth Pegasus was one of them. When it appeared, Luo Yifeng's expression changed drastically. He felt an immense pressure descend upon him. The Pegasus's eerie eyes locked onto him, and his spirit force flow felt like it had been frozen. He took a deep breath and gripped his sword tightly, focusing all his power into one final strike. The sword light, dazzling like a cleaving canyon, charged toward Mo Lei with endless sword energy. Mo Lei narrowed his eyes slightly. He stepped back with his right foot, clenched his right fist, bent his right arm and punched. At that moment, the Rebirth Pegasus in the sky moved with him. The godlike pressure of an ancient beast filled the arena. The Pegasus reared its head and roared, then fused into Mo Lei's body. In that moment, Mo Lei felt power coursing through every fiber of his being. The force from his fist split the air in two and shattered the incoming sword light. His punch didn't stop there. Luo Yifeng hadn't expected his full-force strike to be broken so easily. He couldn't react in time. Mo Lei's punch landed squarely in his abdomen. Luo Yifeng coughed up blood and was flung across the arena. As Luo Yifeng's body crashed into the chairs nearby, all the watching disciples felt a jolt in their hearts. The way they looked at the boy on stage had completely changed. Lying on the ground, Luo Yifeng looked unwillingly at the arena, wanting to say something more. But the pain from his injuries made even breathing hard. He could only sit cross-legged and begin to recover. As the inner court elder announced the top 3 of the tournament, the entire Sacred Spring sect erupted in celebration. Unlike the boos when the boy first took the stage, now there were cheers. "Wait!" Just as the tournament was about to end, Mo Lei suddenly shouted. Seeing the elder's puzzled expression, Mo Lei stepped down and walked up to the 7th Grand Elder. He spoke respectfully. "Elder Tianjin, I have a few suggestions."
Maui them?
The elder looked at Mo Lei in surprise and smiled. "Go ahead. Say what you want. I've often heard that the true martial sacred ground is the greatest sect in the Western region, and I've always held it in deep admiration," Mo Lei said calmly. "I've trained for years, always hoping to spar with a disciple of the sacred ground, yet never had the chance. Now that I finally have the opportunity, may I be allowed to experience the strength of a sacred ground disciple?" Upon hearing this, Grand Elder Tianjin subtly glanced at Luo Changhe. He wasn't sure if this request came from the disciple's own initiative, or if it was a deliberate provocation by Luo Changhe. The difference between the two was quite intriguing. Insolence. The sacred ground is only here to observe our inner court competition, not for sect-to-sect sparring. It's not your place to make such suggestions, Luo Changhe exclaimed angrily, clearly startled. He hadn't expected Mo Lei to be so bold. Even if sparring were the goal, it should wait for an official intersect competition, not be challenged so directly like this. That came off as outright provocation against the true martial sacred ground. Though the Sacred Spring sect was powerful, there was still a large gap between them and the imperial lineages, especially one like the true martial sacred ground, a sect that had produced 4 grand emperors. Luo Changhe, though not one to flatter power, didn't want to offend such a behemoth. It's no matter, Grand Elder Tianjin interrupted with a smile. I actually support sparring between disciples. It reminds our own that there's always someone stronger out there, and that just bearing the sacred ground's name doesn't mean they can act above others. It's just unfortunate. I only brought our core disciples with me this time. I'm afraid you're no match for them. Luang and Kai Yufei were both already at the Paragon Meridian Realm, while Mo was only at the True Meridian Realm. It would feel too much like bullying. As for Su Zimo and Little Gui, Grand Elder Tianjin hadn't even considered them. One was unremarkable among the inner disciples, and the other had only recently begun cultivation. If it's not convenient, then forget I said anything. My apologies, I spoke out of turn. Mo quickly added. His challenge to the true martial sacred ground had two purposes. First, to establish dominance. Having defeated Luo Yifeng, the top inner disciple, his prestige was already high. If he could also defeat a disciple of the sacred ground, his standing within the sect would be solidified. Second, it was to prove something to himself. Years ago, the first sect he applied to was the true martial sacred ground. But due to his low talent, he was rejected. He eventually ended up at the Sacred Spring sect, and by chance inherited the legacy of the true Fool Sage. How about I give it a try? Just as Mo was preparing to step down, Su Zimo suddenly stood and spoke. Amid surprised looks, he walked step by step from the audience seating to the main area. Grand Elder Tianjin, would it be all right if I stepped in? Su Zimo asked with a smile. Grand Elder Tianjin stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Very well. Keep it friendly, just a spar. In truth, Grand Elder Tianjin didn't want Su Zimo to fight. Su Zimo had only recently started cultivating. There was no need for him to play the hero. Even if this was only a friendly match, it still reflected on the sect's reputation. You've just fought a hard battle. I'll give you a moment to rest, Su Zimo said, then walked up to the dueling stage. Sometimes fate really does repeat itself. In his previous life, Mo also challenged the sacred ground after winning his tournament. Back then, Su Zimo had just started cultivating and was only at the early Meridian Forging realm, unable to accept the challenge. The matter was left unresolved. But this time, he felt it was necessary to teach Mo a lesson. Not for glory or honor, but simply because, as a disciple of the true martial sacred ground, he couldn't back down and allow himself to be looked down upon. No need. That last fight didn't use up much, Mo said, shaking his head. Hearing this, Luo Yifeng, who was still healing nearby, nearly coughed up more blood out of anger. It was bad enough to be defeated, but now the victor made it sound like the battle had been effortless, as if Luo wasn't even worthy of being a rival. Young people tend to be fiery, I understand, but don't force yourself. Show me your best, that's also a form of respect toward me, Su Zimo said with a smile. Take a short rest. I don't want anyone to say I won unfairly. Mo gave him a long look, then nodded and sat cross-legged to begin recuperating. The previous battle had indeed taken its toll. The reason he initially refused Su Zimo was because he felt the gesture was condescending, but now he understood it wasn't meant that way. A massive blue Luan bird was flying toward the true martial sacred ground, covering the sky. This colossal sect, seated in the far western region, had ruled for millennia since it was founded by Grand Emperor Jinwu. Its centuries of peace were about to be disrupted for the first time. A mighty sacred pressure radiated from the bird. Elder Xianyun stood in mid-air, waves rippling through the space around her. Every disciple in the sect could feel the vast force pressing upon them. Who dares invade my sacred ground? A deep, ancient voice boomed through the sect. Several powerful auras burst into the sky, instantly pushing down Xianyun's sacred pressure. I've only come to seek justice, Elder Xianyun said, her face changing slightly, though her presence remained unwavering as she stood atop the bird's head. As her words fell, a subtle change in the surrounding Tao rhythm could be felt. All the gathered auras suddenly vanished. It was as if space and time itself had frozen. On a distant mountain peak, Su Qingshan stood in green robes, like a scholar walking out of a misty landscape painting. His robe fluttered in the wind, his long hair tied neatly. With each step, he seemed to bridge entire realms as he slowly walked forward. With one step into the void, he who had been on a distant peak a moment ago, now, within a blink, stood before the Blue Luan. Lord Su, I'm here to inquire about the matter concerning our Sex Saintess, Elder Xianyun said with a calm expression. I don't care for your explanations, Su Qingshan replied flatly. If you've come seeking an answer, come as a guest. If you've come on behalf of the Immortal Spirit Sect to declare war on my true martial sacred ground, then I accept. Elder Xianyun's expression shifted slightly but remained firm. I only came to ask about the Saintess. I'll ask only once, do you want war or not? Su Qingshan said coldly. If not, mind your tone. If yes, then today, I'll wipe the Immortal Spirit Sect off the face of the Western region. Unless Grand Emperor Wu Chun descends, know this, my true martial sacred ground is not without Grand Emperors of our own. As Su Qingshan finished speaking, the calm aura around him shifted. A vast, imperial power, like that of a sovereign overlord, exploded from his body, blanketing the entire sky. On the dueling platform of the Sacred Spring Sect, Mo finished his recovery, exhaled a long breath of white mist, and stepped back onto the stage. Let's begin, Mo said to Su Zimo, his tone calm. The black tortoise let out a low cry, and the fierce tiger roared. Mo dared not hold back, and charged at Su Zimo with full force. Clang! With a metallic ring, most of the audience didn't even catch Su Zimo's draw. It was so fast that a dazzling arc of blade light had already bloomed in front of their eyes. This draw was executed at an extreme speed and carried terrifying sharpness. Before Mo could react, the phantoms of the tiger and tortoise around him had already been slashed apart and shattered. His expression turned grave. He quickly retreated 2 steps. He hadn't expected that a single, ordinary slash from the opponent would so easily destroy both of his beast phantoms. Taking a long breath, Mo summoned the phantom of the rebirth Pegasus once again. A powerful ancient beast aura surged toward Su Zimo. 19 forms of Dao seeking, 5th form, windstorm rises. Su Zimo whispered. His curved blade stirred up a storm, transforming into a raging gale that radiated from its edge. The surrounding spiritual energy twisted into tornadoes, all gathering at the blade's tip. As the blade collided with the rebirth Pegasus, cracks began to spread across the dueling platform beneath them. 2 forces of ultimate intensity clashed in a stalemate. The rebirth Pegasus roared, its strange dual-colored eyes reflecting a brilliant radiance. On the blade, the fierce wind intensified. The storm howled, as though it would bury the entire world. Mo had pushed himself to the limit, his face nearly twisted with effort. Yet Su Zimo remained calm, handling it with ease. He gently stepped back half a pace, murmuring, 6th form, blade of slaughter. The storm on the blade began to subside. A choking, bloody aura filled the air as Su Zimo's weapon, Shadow Tyrant, was entirely shrouded in crimson. Mo stared at the eerie red blade, seeing within it a vast ocean of blood. That ocean of blood seemed to surge toward him, threatening to drown him entirely. In the blink of an eye, the rebirth Pegasus gave a pained shriek and shattered. Mo couldn't dodge in time, and the blade pierced directly through his right shoulder. The arena fell silent. Only the crackling sound of the dueling platform fracturing remained. What was already covered in cracks now completely collapsed. Blood dripped steadily from Mo's shoulder, and the blood-soaked curved blade appeared even more ominous. I have lost, Mo said through gritted teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. Su Zimo chuckled softly, withdrew his blade, and stepped off the stage. As expected, Sacred Ground disciples are incredibly gifted, Luo Changhe said, with an awkward smile from the audience. He'd thought Mo might lose, but he hadn't expected him to lose this quickly and decisively. It hadn't even taken 3 moves. Brother Luo flatters us, Grand Elder Tianjin said. shaking his head with a smile. Looking at Su Zimo, who had just stepped off the platform, he asked, "Little Zimo, how long have you been cultivating?" "Not even half a year," Su Zimo replied. "And where are you ranked on our inner court's hidden dragon list?" Grand Elder Tianjin asked further. Just like the crouching tiger list in the outer court, the inner court had its own ranking system. "I'm ashamed to say, I haven't made it onto the hidden dragon list yet," Su Zimo said with a regretful sigh. "Then you'll need to work harder. Only by entering the hidden dragon list can you be considered an elite inner disciple," Grand Elder Tianjin said, shaking his head as if it were a pity. As they chatted, Luo Changhe's face grew more and more sour. These two were putting on a show right in front of him. A disciple who hadn't even made the hidden dragon list had just thrashed their top inner disciple. If that was the case, wouldn't those ranked on the hidden dragon list be able to crush even their core disciples? Luo Changhe didn't believe for a second that someone with Su Zimo's strength wasn't on the list. But he had no rebuttal. His own disciples had failed to prove themselves. If his disciple had won, he would be the one showing off right now. It was also the first time he realized just how petty Grand Elder Tianjin could be. Grand Elder Tianjin, the inner court tournament is essentially over. I'll ask the Grand Elder to host you for a bit. As for the matter of the immortal spirit Sex Saintus, I must go attend to it, Luo Changhe said, finally unable to endure the bragging any longer and looking for an excuse to leave. "No worries, go ahead. Don't mind us." Grand Elder Tianjin waved him off with a smile. Watching the inner court matches today was truly rewarding. Sacred Spring Sect is full of promising talents. "You're still showing off as I'm leaving?" Luo Changhe replied with a forced smile, though in his heart he was cursing Grand Elder Tianjin's entire ancestry 18 generations back. At the same time, in the true martial sacred ground, Su Qingshan's vast ocean-like aura enveloped the sky. As that pressure surged to the heavens, several other powerful holy auras also erupted across the court. When these auras connected across the sky, the resulting divine force was overwhelming, like the very heavens were collapsing, akin to a grand emperor emerging. Clouds swirled, thunder rolled, and the sky boomed. Elder Xianyun turned pale and felt a backlash from the overwhelming pressure. Her throat sweetened. She almost coughed up blood. "Master Su, please don't be angry. We had no intention of declaring war." Elder Fanyun hurriedly held back Elder Xianyun, her expression respectful. "She was simply too emotional about the matter of our court saintess. We hope you won't take offense. Since the founding of our sacred ground, you're one of the few who's dared act so brazenly." Su Qingshan snorted coldly. He reached toward the giant blue luan beside him. Spirit force condensed into a massive hand, and with the light touch of its index finger, heaven and earth trembled. Infinite spirit force spread from the fingertip, compressing into a black hole-like vortex. Space shattered, the laws of reality distorted. The massive blue luan didn't even have time to cry out before it was obliterated by a single tap. The area where the blue luan had stood became a vacuum. Elder Xianyun broke into a cold sweat. Though she was also at the Empyrean Meridian realm, she hadn't even had a chance to resist. Fortunately, Su Qingshan had targeted the luan, not her. "This is a warning. If it happens again, your immortal spirit sect will be next," Su Qingshan said flatly. "Master Su, I was the one at fault," Elder Xianyun said after a long pause, bowing slightly. "I apologize for my actions just now." The Empyrean Meridian realm stood at the apex of this world's power hierarchy. For someone at that level to apologize was a rare and serious matter indeed. "Master Su, I came this time to ask about something related to Sunshine Village," said Elder Xianyun. "I'm not in the mood to answer your questions right now. Come back tomorrow," Su Qingshan replied indifferently with a wave of his hand. Then, a faint azure spirit force gathered, and his figure disappeared in an instant. Elder Xianyun stared at the spot where Su Qingshan had been standing, her gaze sharp. She felt that this man had become even more unfathomable. "Elder Xianyun, what should we do now?" Elder Fanyun asked from the side. "Let's head back and return tomorrow. There has to be a solution," Elder Xianyun replied. The true martial sacred ground may be powerful, but they still have to abide by the rules. They won't go to war over a mere village. As the two elders left in quiet frustration, Su Qingshan returned to the grand hall of the true martial sacred ground. Inside the grand hall, aside from Su Qingshan, the other 6 grand elders were also present. "Master, what exactly is going on with the Immortal Spirit sect?" the grand elder asked. "I'd like to know that myself," Su Qingshan replied calmly. "Master, I've already sent disciples from the intelligence hall to investigate. We should have results soon," said the third elder. "Let's wait until we get those results," Su Qingshan nodded. "I've also heard rumors that the Palace of Paintings is about to reemerge in Violet Sun City." "Yes, many martial artists have already rushed to Violet Sun City," the third elder replied. "Years ago, Heartless Painter and his Palace of Paintings vanished together, which shocked the entire Far West and became an enduring mystery. But recently someone obtained a painting and accidentally uncovered its secret. Turns out Heartless Painter had hidden the entire Palace of Paintings within one of his artworks. No wonder we couldn't find it for so many years. I'm not particularly interested in his legendary brush," said Su Qingshan slowly. "But it's said that he once obtained the World Pearl. That could be hidden in his legacy. This time we must not miss it. We must obtain it." "Who shall we send to the Palace of Paintings?" the third elder asked. "The Grand Elder will lead the team. Choose a few disciples from the core ranks," Su Qingshan instructed. By midday, the disciples from the intelligence hall had returned with a rough summary of events. "You're saying that due to Bailey Zhao's connection, the Immortal Spirit sect is hesitating on whether to act against Sunshine Village?" Su Qingshan asked thoughtfully. "Yes. In truth, even the Immortal Spirit sect isn't certain if that village is the one in question," the disciple replied respectfully. Su Qingshan pondered for a moment and looked to the other elders. "What do you all think?" "This has nothing to do with our sect," the Grand Elder replied flatly. "It's not worth turning hostile with the Immortal Spirit sect over a village." "I don't agree." The 6th Grand Elder, Xiao Ruoxuan, stepped forward. "We should speak to Xiao first. No matter what, she's the heir to the Grand Empress. If it's her village, she should have a say." "Very well. Bring Bailey Xiao here," Su Qingshan said. Before long, Bailey Xiao was summoned. She greeted everyone present politely. Xiao Ruoxuan then explained the situation about Sunshine Village to her. Bailey Zhao's face instantly turned pale. She shook her head in disbelief. "That's impossible. Chu Yang and I grew up together. He would never hire someone to assassinate the saintess of the Immortal Spirit sect. There's no bad blood between them. And when I left the village, he had just reached the mortal realm. There's no way he had that kind of power." "We didn't call you here to defend him," the Grand Elder said coldly. "Since Sunshine Village is your hometown, we felt you had the right to be informed. That's all. Master, please, save Sunshine Village. The people there are innocent," Bailey Xiao pleaded, dropping to her knees before Su Qingshan. "It's just a small village. Is it really that important to you?" Xiao Ruoxuan asked, somewhat helplessly. "I grew up there. The villagers are like family to me. I can't just sit by and watch them die," Bailey Xiao said, shaking her head. She was silent for a long moment, then exhaled deeply, as if making a painful decision. With determination in her eyes, she looked at Su Qingshan and said, "Master, if the sect truly has reservations and won't help, I understand. I'm willing to hand over the Grand Empress Hongtian's legacy and face life or death alongside Sunshine Village." "What nonsense are you saying?" Xiao Ruoxuan's brows furrowed. "You think I'd stand by and watch you throw your life away?" "Master, it's just a village. They're being used as scapegoats," Xiao Ruoxuan said to Su Qingshan. "Let me negotiate with the Immortal Spirit sect. Whatever price needs to be paid, I'll handle it." "What do the rest of you think?" Su Qingshan asked the remaining elders. The room was silent for a while. Then the Grand Elder spoke flatly. "If the 6th Grand Elder can handle it, then let her take charge of the matter." "Very well," Su Qingshan said. turning to Xiao Ruoxuan. Tell the Immortal Spirit Sect that the true martial sacred ground is willing to assist them in finding Chu Yang. Announce a bounty across the entire western region. Anyone who can provide a confirmed lead on Chu Yang's whereabouts will receive a planet-grade weapon. Anyone who can capture Chu Yang will receive a star-grade weapon. That's the reward we can offer. If the Immortal Spirit Sect wishes to raise the stakes, they'll have to pay the difference themselves. Also, have Bailey Xiao draw a portrait of Chu Yang. We'll need it for the wanted posters. Hearing Su Qingshan's words, Xiao Ruoxuan nodded. Bailey Xiao immediately said, Master, Chu Yang can't be the killer. Enough. Someone has to take the fall for the Saintess' death. The Grand Elder interrupted coldly. If you keep this up, then hand over the Grand Empress's legacy and go back to Sunshine Village. Let's see who you can save. Bailey Xiao fell silent. She understood she had no choice. The true martial sacred ground was only helping Sunshine Village because of the Grand Empress's legacy. Later, back on graceful Willow Mountain, under Xiao Ruoxuan's persuasion, Bailey Xiao returned to her quarters. Her heart felt like it was being carved apart with a blade. Tears welled up as she personally drew the wanted portrait of the one she loved most. Staring at the familiar face on the paper, her mind went completely blank. I'm sorry, Chu Yang. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, hugging her head, crying alone. She couldn't just draw a fake image. With so many people in Sunshine Village, anyone could easily tell if it was real or not. No one would ever understand the pain of handing over the one you love most and personally sending them into the depths of hell. In the stillness of the long night, a cold wind swept across the mountaintop. It brushed gently over the hills, causing the tall trees on either side to sway. Soft silver moonlight cascaded down like water. A young man sat on the hillside with a sword at his waist and a jug of strong wine in his hand. He drank slowly, letting the cold wind wash over him. The fiery alcohol brought a little warmth to his heart. Chu Yang looked down at the wanted poster in his hand with a wry smile, his mind still in a daze. What do I have to do with the Saintess of the Immortal Spirit Sect? Why am I suddenly wanted in every major city across the entire western region? You've probably been framed, said the Lord of Samsara with a sigh. He had experienced countless storms in his life. Many things were clear to him at a glance. I can go explain myself to them and clear things up, Chu Yang said firmly. It won't work. The moment you show up, they'll try to kill you, the Lord of Samsara replied. Life is cheap to them. They'd rather kill the wrong person than let someone go. These so-called major sects are often more ruthless and tyrannical than ordinary folk. But I can't hide like this forever, Chu Yang said helplessly. That's nothing. I can teach you disguise techniques, the Lord of Samsara chuckled. My method is highly advanced. Unless someone is an Imperial Meridian Realm cultivator with true fate, most people won't see through it. At the Sacred Spring Sect, the inner court tournament had concluded successfully. Grand Elder Tianjin was preparing to return to the true martial sacred ground with his group aboard the Sage Ship. Su Zimo approached Grand Elder Tianjin with a smile. Seventh Grand Elder, I won't be returning with you. Why? Asked the Elder, puzzled. I want to go out and train for a while. There's nothing urgent waiting for me back at the sect. Su Zimo smiled. All right then, just be careful. Grand Elder Tianjin replied after giving Su Zimo a long, thoughtful look before boarding the ship with the others. The match against Emole had changed how Grand Elder Tianjin viewed Su Zimo. Of course, everyone has their secrets, but the Elder believed Su Zimo was far from ordinary. Su Zimo set out alone, having declined Xiao Gizi's offer to accompany him. He watched as the Sage Ship soared into the sky, shrinking into a small black on the horizon. With his curved blade on his back, Su Zimo adjusted his robes and began heading toward Violet Sun City. Violet Sun City was the capital of the Violet Sun Empire. The empire had stood for thousands of years, surviving countless wars. The ancient city carried immense honor and history. In earlier times, Violet Sun City had already been more prosperous than most cities. Now, with the Palace of Paintings rumored to be emerging, People from all directions were flooding into the grand city. It was nearly bursting at the seams with crowds. After 3 days of travel, Su Zimo finally arrived at the gates of Violet Sun City, one of the oldest cities in the western region. The city was divided into inner and outer parts. The inner city housed the imperial palace, which was off-limits to commoners. On the main streets of the outer city, vendors were everywhere, selling weapons, meridian techniques, and immortal medicines in dazzling variety. As Su Zimo entered the city, he found every inn completely full. The streets bustled with more than just unaffiliated cultivators. Most were sect disciples. They were easy to recognize in their uniform sect robes. Su Zimo walked down the main street and identified disciples from at least 10 different sects. Passing through the bustling crowd, he stopped in a quieter alley. In the center of that street was a tavern called Situ Inn, which was doing brisk business. Su Zimo hadn't expected Situ Yunqing to move so quickly. In just a short time, she had opened a restaurant in the capital of the Violet Sun Empire. Of course, besides her personal capability, this success was also due to Su Zimo's substantial support in resources. Entering the restaurant, Su Zimo found the first floor full, with no private rooms available either. By luck, he found an open table by the window on the second floor. Pouring himself a drink, he looked out at the lively crowd below. He knew that most people here were after the legacy of Heartless Painter and the Palace of Paintings. Heartless Painter had once caused a huge stir across the western region. Legend says he was born into a wealthy family and loved painting from a young age. His family was well off and could afford his passion. By the age of 15, he was already a renowned master of calligraphy and painting. Many were obsessed with his works. Some even waited 7 days at his door just for a chance to acquire one. Though his family was rich, they were still ordinary people, not martial cultivators. It was said that during an autumn outing, he once stumbled upon a wolf hair brush. The brush seemed to resonate with him. Drawn by an unseen force, he dripped his blood onto it out of curiosity. In that instant, the brush erupted in golden light, and a complete cultivation method was transmitted into his memory. After absorbing it, he discovered it was a technique for cultivation. When practiced to a high level, it could supposedly turn items painted on paper into real, physical objects. In theory, the technique had no limit. Even if he drew a Grand Emperor on paper, it could be brought into the real world. But to achieve that level, the cost would be greater than becoming an actual Grand Emperor. Heartless Painter lived during the same era as Grand Emperor Wu Chan, and was one of his strongest rivals in the struggle for destiny. In the final, ultimate battle, he was defeated and disappeared completely. Years later, he reappeared when the legendary World Pearl, ranked first on the world's rarest treasures list, emerged, causing bloodshed across the eastern continent. Even the true martial Sacred Ground and 5 other imperial lineages joined the fight for the pearl. That day, Heartless Painter descended from the sky and, by himself, overpowered 8 Empyrean Meridian Realm experts. He took the World Pearl and left as casually as he had come. Since then, Heartless Painter vanished again, and even the Palace of Paintings he founded disappeared overnight. As the waiter brought his food, Su Zimo's thoughts returned to the present. He ate while planning his next steps. His purpose for coming to the Palace of Paintings was to obtain the World Pearl. He was now at the peak of the true Meridian Realm, and his next step was to condense his true fate and ascend to the desolate Meridian Realm. In fact, had it not been for the need to condense his fate, he would have broken through long ago. Condensing one's true fate is one of the most important stages in a martial artist's life. The better the true fate you condense, the more powerful it becomes when you later reach the Imperial Meridian Realm and your fate manifests. Su Zimo didn't plan to follow the same path he took in his previous life. His goal was the World Pearl. If he could forge the World Pearl into his true fate, he could condense an entire world within himself. Though such a world would be a pseudo-world, incomparable to a true world, even a fake one held immense power. Using the top-ranked item from the world's rarest treasures list as one's true fate, such a feat would be unprecedented. As Su Zimo pondered these things while eating, a woman dressed in black ascended the stairs. The moment she appeared, the bustling second floor instantly fell silent. It was as if the very air turned colder. The woman wore tight black leather clothing, her figure striking. She had short, ear-length hair and a long black blade strapped to her back. As she climbed the stairs, many patrons forgot to eat. They simply stared, dazed. After scanning the floor and finding no vacant seats, the woman sat directly at Su Zimo's table. Su Zimo glanced at her, then calmly continued eating. The woman chuckled with interest. "You're not afraid of me?" "Afraid of what?" Su Zimo replied coolly. "Aren't you scared I might kill you?" she said with a smirk. "You can't. And neither can your purgatory sacred ground," he answered, shaking his head. Su Zimo knew her from his previous life. Her name was Sha Qinghua, known in the martial world as the Black Demoness. And she was this generation's holy daughter of the purgatory sacred ground. The surname Sha, meaning slaughter, was rare, but her ancestry was well known. Her ancestor was Grand Emperor Sha, the second Grand Emperor of the purgatory sacred ground, and she was his direct descendant. In 4 words, she could be described as cold-blooded and ruthless. She was a true demon who killed without blinking. It was said that once, simply because a disciple from a sect unknowingly offended her, she stormed their mountain and slaughtered the entire sect. What amused Su Zimo, however, was that in his previous life, this vicious and unyielding demoness fell in love with Chu Yang. In front of Chu Yang, she was gentle and obedient, like a docile kitten, and eventually became one of his many lovers. "Are you from the true martial sacred ground, or the divine sun's sacred ground?" Sha Qinghua asked, clearly intrigued. In the western region, there were only 3 imperial lineages. Only the true martial and divine sun sacred grounds could contend with the purgatory sacred ground. "Why should I tell you?" Su Zimo asked with a faint smile. "Don't think I wouldn't dare kill you just because you're from an imperial lineage," she snorted arrogantly. "I heard people call you the Lady Death Demon behind your back. Is that true?" Su Zimo asked with a grin. "You're courting death," Sha Qinghua snapped, instantly drawing her blade. But someone was faster. Clang! A flash of dazzling light slashed across Sha Qinghua's hand. A deep wound appeared on the back of her hand. Flesh split, blood pouring. "This is a warning. If you ever draw your blade in front of me again, next time I'll take your head," Su Zimo said calmly, still picking food off his plate as if nothing had happened. No one saw how his blade had moved. All they saw was a flash of white light and then blood. "I'll remember you," Sha Qinghua said coldly, staring at Su Zimo. "Oh," Su Zimo nodded. "Then be sure to remember me for the rest of your life. Don't forget." Sha Qinghua looked down at the deep cut on her hand. Without even frowning, she turned and left. After finishing his meal, Su Zimo also got up and left. As soon as he was gone, the previously silent second floor erupted in noisy chatter as everyone speculated about his identity. The Palace of Paintings had already appeared days earlier, but entry rules hadn't yet been finalized. No one could enter yet. The entry rules were usually decided by the 3 emperor lineage sections. Rogue cultivators and smaller sects could only hope to tag along for scraps. Now, with the purgatory sacred ground already present, only the true martial and divine sun sacred grounds had yet to arrive. Su Zimo made his way to the western region of Violet Sun City and saw a massive palace floating in midair. The palace looked surreal, almost like a painting. From every angle, it seemed to shift, its contours flowing like brushstrokes, creating a sense of unreality. Yet the palace was real. Rumor had it that heartless painter, during his breakthrough to the Empyrean Meridian realm, was struck by inspiration and painted a palace on a scroll. Thunder rumbled, and spirit force surged 90,000 miles. Then the painted palace manifested into the real world. Whether that legend was true, no one knew. By now, many people had gathered beneath the Palace of Paintings. Not only had the 3 major imperial lineages sent representatives, but elite sects like Immortal Spirit Sect and Sacred Spring Sect had come to compete as well. Su Zimo had only just arrived when gasps of astonishment erupted from the crowd. "It's the true martial sacred ground," He looked up to see a massive sage ship approaching rapidly from the distance. As it drew near, its details became clearer. Standing atop the ship was the first Grand Elder, his green robe fluttering in the wind, his white hair billowing behind him. Beside him stood 3 disciples: his grandson Xiao Xingyu, his top disciple Zhong Xian, and Meng Kuo, the chief disciple of Su Qingshan. As the sage ship neared the Palace of Paintings, a sharp, beastly roar rang out from afar. Everyone turned to see a massive golden crow soaring through the sky. It was tens of meters long, blazing like a rising sun, its entire body cloaked in flames. "The divine sun's sacred ground has arrived too," someone gasped. "Tsh, they're still as flashy as ever," another scoffed. As the airship and the golden crow both approached, a figure could be seen seated cross-legged in the air near the Palace of Paintings. It was an old man, wreathed in dark mist. His eyes had been closed, but now suddenly opened as he stood. "Elder Xiao, Elder Xing, you've finally arrived," he said with a smile. "Elder Haiyan, sorry to keep you waiting," said the Grand Elder of the true martial sacred ground, stepping forward along with the Elder from the Divine Sun's sacred ground. "Elder Haiyan, what's the situation with the Palace of Paintings?" the Grand Elder asked. "I've already investigated it," Haiyan replied. "The palace has restrictions. Only those under the age of 50 can enter. Then it's fine. That works out perfectly. We can just send our disciples in," the Grand Elder said with a smile. "Many legacies left behind by the predecessors are either intended for their descendants or for a chosen successor. So most inheritances come with restrictions. No senior would want their legacy to be seized by the older generation. That's why the major sects brought younger disciples. They anticipated this. Is there a way to break this restriction?" Elder Xing from the Divine Sun's sacred ground asked after some thought. Heartless Painter was no ordinary person. Elder Haiyan shook his head. "The restriction he laid down can't be broken by us. Unless we use an Imperial-grade divine weapon, there's no chance. But from my observations, if we forcefully break the seal, the entire Palace of Paintings will self-destruct. In that case, let the disciples enter. We'll open the palace tomorrow morning," the Grand Elder decided after a moment. The other elders from the 2 sects nodded in agreement. The Grand Elder turned to the crowd of scattered cultivators below and said loudly, "As decided by the 3 great sects, entry to the Palace of Paintings will commence tomorrow morning. Disciples of the 3 major sects will enter first. Others may follow immediately after, but maintain order. Anyone who causes trouble will suffer the consequences." His voice echoed throughout Violet Sun City. Upon hearing that the palace would soon open, everyone's spirits soared, eager and excited. If someone were lucky enough to inherit Heartless Painter's legacy, they could instantly rise to greatness. Since the time was set for the next morning, many people dispersed for the night, returning to their rented inns. Su Zimo was just looking for a place to rest, when he suddenly heard someone calling his name. He looked up and saw Meng Kuo, his father Su Qingshan's chief disciple, leaning out the window of a nearby tavern, shouting down at him. Meng Kuo had played with him when they were younger, though they hadn't seen much of each other in recent years due to cultivation. Now at the peak of the Paragon Meridian realm, close to breaking into the Imperial Meridian realm, Meng Kuo no longer gained much from staying within the sect. He spent most of his time traveling and tempering himself. Su Zimo hadn't planned to meet up with the true martial sacred ground. He was going to enter the palace alone. He already knew its layout from his past life. But now that Meng Kuo had seen him, it wasn't something he could keep secret. He headed up to the tavern's 2nd floor. Meng Kuo greeted him with a smile. "Junior brother, what are you doing here?" "I'm out training. I heard the Palace of Paintings had appeared and thought I'd check it out," Su Zimo replied casually. Meng Kuo stood tall, nearly 2 meters, with bulging muscles under his black robe. He radiated strength and power. His hair was messy and voluminous, resembling a wild afro, and flared out in all directions. "When did you get back, Brother Meng?" Su Zimo asked as he stepped inside. Looking around, he realized the 2nd floor was filled with disciples from various sects, Not just true martial sacred ground, but also purgatory sacred ground, divine sun sacred ground, and several others. I just returned a few days ago. Master asked me to accompany the Grand Elder to the Palace of Paintings. Meng Kuo said with a laugh. Who knows? This might be my opportunity to break through. Su Zimo nodded. He knew Meng Kuo had been stuck at the same realm for quite some time. The further one progressed, the harder cultivation became. Unlocking meridian gates got exponentially tougher. Since you're here, go in with me tomorrow. I'll protect you, Meng Kuo joked. Su Zimo nodded, not objecting. He knew everyone would be split into different areas once inside the palace anyway. While they chatted, a man and woman approached. The woman was Sha Qinghua, holy daughter of the Purgatory Sacred Ground. The man beside her wore a black robe and covered his face with a black cloth, leaving only his cold, gloomy eyes visible. What do you want? Meng Kuo frowned. Brother, he's the one who injured me earlier, Sha Qinghua said, pointing at Su Zimo. The man looked at Su Zimo. His eyes were lifeless, like stagnant water, or like he was already looking at a corpse. What do you want, demon prince? Meng Kuo slammed the table, full of anger. This man was the Purgatory Sacred Ground's holy son. Very few knew his real name, most just called him Tian Mozi, the demon prince. Tian Mozi glanced at Meng Kuo, then locked eyes with Su Zimo. His voice was low, carrying a chilling pressure. No one is allowed to harm my sister. I'll let it go this time. But if it happens again, even if you're the true martial sacred ground's crown prince, I'll rip you to pieces. You want to start a war with our sect? Meng Kuo said grimly, but Tian Mozi didn't even acknowledge him. His eyes remained fixed on Su Zimo. It's fine, Brother Meng, Su Zimo said with a smile, shaking his head. Then he looked back at Tian Mozi and spoke coldly. You should teach your sister to keep her distance. Don't let her provoke me again. He raised his right hand, clenched his fist tightly. Bam, 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 his knuckles cracked with force. Otherwise, next time, I'll crush her head like a watermelon and feed it to the dogs. He said it with a smile. His tone was calm, but the madness in his eyes was bone-chilling. Tian Mozi's expression changed. In Su Zimo, he saw a reflection of himself. In many ways, they were the same. Both were extreme, dangerous, and willing to do anything to achieve their goals. Tian Mozi stared at Su Zimo for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Brother, what are you doing? Sha Qinghua asked, confused, following him. Don't provoke him again, Tian Mozi said quietly as he returned to his seat. Why not? Sha Qinghua asked. Because he'll kill you. Upon hearing Tian Mozi's words, Sha Qinghua froze. She had always carried a sense of superiority in her heart. As the descendant of a grand emperor and the holy daughter of an imperial lineage, few dared provoke her. Even those stronger than her usually avoided confrontation. Aside from her background, everyone also knew she had a brother who doted on her like a madman, terrifying and overprotective. But now, that very brother had told her that everything she relied on meant nothing to some people. Some people would kill her without hesitation, as easily as smashing a watermelon. Sha Qinghua glanced back toward Su Zimo, her head bowed, lost in thought. Meng Kuo also looked at Su Zimo in surprise. He hadn't expected that after so long apart, Su Zimo had changed this much. As the two were eating, another group of people came up the stairs to the second floor. Su Zimo looked over and saw Xiao Xingyu, the Grand Elder's grandson, and Zhong Xian, the top disciple, among them. Xiao Xingyu noticed Su Zimo as well and asked in surprise, Su Zimo, what are you doing here? What? Do I need to report to you everywhere I go? Su Zimo replied flatly. Xiao Xingyu snorted coldly and sat at a nearby table with his group. After some hushed discussion, a young man in white stood up and approached Su Zimo. Greetings, young Master Su, he said with a smile. I'm Zhang He, a disciple of the ethereal sect. May I introduce myself? Fuck off, Su Zimo replied without even lifting his head, still focused on his food. He knew Zhang He was with Xiao Xingyu and clearly had bad intentions. Besides, Su Zimo was deep in thought about the opportunities from his previous life. He had no time for their petty mind games. Even if he killed these people, it wouldn't bring him any real benefits. They simply weren't on the same level. Su Zimo was focused on regaining his past God Meridian realm cultivation, but forging a new path, not repeating the old one. He aimed to maximize his growth. Whether it was the hell-suppressing deity physique or the world pearl, they were things he had once longed for but failed to obtain. As for these so-called holy sons and holy daughters, they were meaningless to him. Zhang He frowned slightly at Su Zimo's cold attitude, but quickly masked it with a smile and continued, "Young Master Su, I heard some rumors recently and was hoping you could clarify them. I wonder, are you unwilling or simply afraid?" Seeing the clear provocation, Su Zimo finally set down his chopsticks and looked up, saying calmly, "I don't have time for your nonsense. You'd better know your limits, otherwise, the consequences might be more than you can handle." Zhang He glanced subtly at Xiao Xingyu, then clapped his hands loudly, drawing everyone's attention in the tavern. "Everyone, listen up. I have a rather amusing story to share," he announced loudly. "Recently, I heard rumors about the Vicelord's son from the true martial sacred ground. They say he uses his father's status to do whatever he wants. He deceives junior sisters in bets, tricking them into stealing Imperial Meridian Realm beast cubs for him. He robs fellow disciples and often mingles with the worst elements of the sect. Now, I usually think such rumors are baseless gossip. But today, I've met the so-called culprit, our very own young Master Su. He looks quite refined. Surely he's not that despicable, shameless, or vulgar. Still, these rumors can be damaging. Perhaps young Master Su could say a few words to clarify things." With Zhang He's loud speech, everyone in the room turned to stare at Su Zimo. Su Zimo gave him a puzzled look, then glanced at Xiao Xingyu. Meeting Xiao's mocking eyes, he understood immediately. This wasn't about the rumor, it was just a setup, a public humiliation. Xiao Xingyu wanted to ruin his reputation in front of their peers. "Why are you hesitating, young Master Su?" Zhang He said with mock surprise. "Don't tell me the rumors are true? I think you should take acting lessons from little Gue," Su Zimo said with a faint smile. "Excuse me?" Zhang He froze. "I don't know what you were paid to come be the fall guy." Su Zimo stood up and smiled. "But I know one thing, no matter how good the reward, you still need to live long enough to enjoy it." "What, are you angry now, Su Zimo? Are you going to kill me?" Zhang He laughed. "Even if I die in front of so many young elites today, at least I'll reveal your true face." "Yep, you guessed right," Su Zimo said as he slowly drew his curved blade. "I'm going to kill you." "You're too much, young Master Su," said a blue-robed youth beside Xiao Xingyu, rising to his feet. "Brother Zhang was just asking you for clarification to protect your reputation, and now you want to kill him?" Xiao Xingyu also stood and shouted, "Su Zimo, what are you doing? Our true martial sacred ground is one of the most prestigious sects in the western region, not some bandit gang. As the Vicelord's son, you represent our sect's image. I won't let you do as you please. I must defend the honor of the sect." "Exactly. How could a great man like Su Qingshan have a son like you? We're ashamed to be in the same sect as you." The room erupted with voices condemning Su Zimo. But many were just spectators. Only Xiao Xingyu's allies were actually criticizing him. Su Zimo merely smiled and calmly took 2 items from his storage ring. One was an oval-shaped formation disc, a level 6 formation, equivalent to a killing array of the Imperial Meridian Realm. It was the same one he'd won from Luang in a bet. The other was a jade pendant, a gift from Su Qingshan himself. Inside was a strand of his divine soul, holding half-step Empyrean Meridian Realm power. As soon as these items appeared, the room fell silent. Many of the gathered disciples, experienced and well-informed, went pale. "Just a quick intro," Su Zimo said casually. "Level 6 formation disc, and a divine soul clone at half-step Empyrean Meridian Realm." The formerly noisy room became so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Some disciples even broke into a cold sweat. "I'm going to kill him," Su Zimo said as he looked around the room. Anyone object? Even Xiao Xingyu didn't dare say a word now. He had never imagined Su Qingshan cared so deeply for his son, splitting a portion of his own soul and giving it to him.